It's been an interesting sort of development. I wasn't really sure what to expect and going into it after a run, but yeah, it definitely didn't pan out the way I thought it would. Currently, I don't really have a good opportunity for next year that I think is worth taking, given where I'm at. So yeah, that's that.
And give us an idea because off seasons exist somewhat differently. We spoke to Grabs, and it's always interesting for me because I think people assume that I have kind of quite a lot of knowledge. I'm one of those people. I'm very much interested in what I'm interested in. I think people assume that I know a bit more than I do sometimes. So Grabs was telling me that in Europe, for example, there's often like a 7-day period after Worlds in which orgs can speak to players. I don't know if that's similar in NA, but give us an idea of how the off season really works for you. Like, what's it been like? You said that you can't really find that many opportunities that interest you. What was it like after Worlds?
Well, after Worlds, to be just clear, I don't have an agent, but after Worlds, it's kind of I did listen to the Grabs interview, so piggybacking off of that, where I do agree, like most of the rosters are typically decided before Worlds ends, or just the process of that is already moving on. So for us, we were given permission to speak to teams before we went to Worlds, but not during Worlds, and then after Worlds, obviously we were able to talk to teams, but by that point, um, I just, for me personally, I didn't really have any offers to join a team that I thought could contend or, have a chance to win by that point, and I reached out to all the teams. So, makes sense from like, team wise, where they feel like they have strong roster and they just want to keep what they have, or they're building, or whatever their reason is. But yeah, I feel like typically the offseason is kind of dictated by the time Worlds is already in, or like free agency window opens, and it kind of was in a similar situation on Energy in 2023, where we just finished Worlds, my contract was coming up, and by the time I get back from Worlds, like there's essentially all those top spots are locked outside of Energy, and at that point, Energy could have just lowballed me and gave me like minimum, and I would have had nowhere to go. So, I mean, they didn't, but they could have, because there's just nowhere else for me to go by that point. So it's a tough situation to be in if you don't, like, let's say you don't perform at Worlds, then you might not even have a team. And if you do well, then unless you're like, just doing really well or performing really well, then it's hard to, just jump teams or, go to better opportunities.
It's interesting to hear you kind of mirror what he's saying in terms of the market being quite predatory to some capacity. But immediately what jumped up at me there, and I want to make sure we go on to it before we move on, is you mentioned that you don't have an agent, which is quite a rarity. Sort of agents seem to kind of have everyone on their books. When did you make that decision, and what's the motivation behind that?
I had an agent in 2022, I think, or no, in 2020 I had an agent, and then um, I felt like when agents represent multiple positions, or like multiple people in the same position, then that just inherently creates a conflict of interest, and that's kind of what happened in my time with an agent, where he was representing two people, and we were going for the same spot on TSM Academy, and um, it it went to Hanser at the time, and he was also representing Hanser, but I was like kept in the dark of just like how that process was going. So I didn't really see the transparency behind that, or know like, hey, um, pretty much just behind the scenes. I feel like it's hard to have your best interests in mind if you're representing multiple players in the same role.
That's interesting though, because it's like immediately what strikes out to me, and I'm sure you'll be able to wrangle your way out of this, is, oh, you're someone that has had quite a lot of difficulty during off seasons, and you also don't have an agent. How much of that do you put down to not having an agent? How capable of you, and how have you stepped up into that role of being your own agent? Do you think you're good at it?
Well, I think agents help in terms of negotiating. I mean, obviously they offer some value for some players, but I think inherently all you really need to do is just reach out to teams and ask if there's any interest in having you as a player for their team for the year or whatever that may look like. And from there, it's up to you to decide like if that's where you want to go, and if it's a good fit for you, or vice versa. So it's not really hard to just send a message to teams if you already know most people in the scene. Be like, hey, I'm interested in next year if there's any opportunities with you, and then just go have a conversation from that. So the reaching out part is not easy. I guess negotiating on your behalf is a bit more difficult where some players just don't have the confidence to really vouch for themselves or just speak in that capacity where an agent for sure may be able to help them. And I guess for top players where it's like, they're contested by multiple teams and they provide way more value because they have more knowledge, which they can leverage to get you a better contract. But I guess for the majority of the players where, you're not like a quid or, someone along those lines where I don't necessarily see the value of giving up whatever the percentage may be from 5 to 10 when all they're realistically doing is negotiating a contract through an offseason and then they just piss off for the remainder of the year and
So
then
I mean, it's a joke I made with
yeah.
grabs. It's like for the amount that some of these agents are charging you, you'd expect them to like be bringing heated towels to your apartment in the morning and like driving you to the office in a limousine. It's crazy because they do, generally speaking, anecdotally from what I've experienced, they do just fuck off for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean they say that they will provide value in terms of brands or sponsorships, but that doesn't really exist in the scene at this point. You don't really see individual players in the league have any individual sponsorships, so I just don't buy the value of agents for a player like myself. Obviously, for top players, I think it's a bit different, but for the majority of the players, I don't see the value of having an agent.
Interesting. I wanted to ask you somewhat of a piercing question because it's quite you're both are going to be very emotionally connected to this. But what do you think is the disconnect between your results and the lack of potential interest in the market? Because when I look at you, you come off the back of a Worlds tournament where, I mean, 100 Seas didn't do amazingly well, but it's like you beat expectations in terms of some of the teams you came up against, major upset, and played spoiler to BLG. You've obviously had a meteoric rise in terms of your social media output, practically a celebrity on Weibo and places like that nowadays. And then even back in 2023 when you made the top eight run, you qualified out of Swiss. That was obviously a major result for NA. You took down G2 as well. And it's not like you've been a passenger at times. You kind of competed with some of the best tops in the league. Where do you think the disconnect is? What are these GMs not seeing in you? How do you emotionally evaluate it? And how do you kind of separate the emotions from the actual reasonability of it?
Um, yeah, I mean, I have thought about that. So I think sometimes it's just, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is it's just you can do everything right, or as best as you can, and things can still end up wrong, and that's just out of your control. And then the suffering attached to that is kind of up to you to decide if you want to, sulk in it or you just have to accept reality and move on. And I'm kind of at that phase where it's like I'm just accepting reality and just moving on because it's just out of my control at this point. I did the best I could, and uh, it's just obviously not where I want to be, but yeah, I guess like emotionally, I've been a bit disconnected from that part because, it's just tough to see, uh, like people in similar positions get more opportunities, whereas I may not be able to in that case as well. So, yeah.
But it must feel because it's not like a thing of like you're kind of middle of the pack and you're fighting for scraps. It must feel like wow, like at the very least, every offseason I should be able to choose like a bad team. But it sounds like you just have no options consistently and you have to like claw your way back in. And it's been at least one or two instances now where you've had to claw your way back in either from academy or elsewhere, just like literally finding any way through the back door that you can. And then
Yeah, that's my way to put it.
ironically, every single time you actually end up performing and either going to like a domestic final, a championship, or damn near it, at least world qualifications. So it's just like I guess for me, it's just like a thing of like we talked about the emotional aspects in response to the initial thing. Do you think GMs are blind to your skill level? Because I'm sure from your perspective, despite humility, you must view yourself as one of the better top laners in NA.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely perceive myself as one of the better top laners, but I'm not sure what the GM see because I guess they're just looking at it from scouting from like coaches, and then coaches, I think I feel like most of them don't have a grasp on what you provide in terms of just as a player and in terms of team culture and environment. Um, what was the first part of the question?
First part of the question was kind of just talking about you've kind of been someone that always claws his way back in
Oh, right,
and then
right, right.
finds
Yeah.
results. It's like an ironic way of going about it, where it's like, well, you haven't given me a team, but like, you must at some
Yeah. I
point,
mean,
you must feel like, oh, in 6 months I'm going to get a call and I'm going to go get I'm going to get an all qualification to Worlds.
yeah, I mean, I did have an offer from Dig, but that's not necessarily enticing enough for me to really consider because realistically, I don't think we would have a great shot of winning. And in my head, I'd be in the same position where I am at the end of this year if I were to play with them for like 1 year and then there goes 1 year of my life. And I don't think much is going to change. So, I didn't really necessarily entertain it that much. Um, but yeah, I mean, that has kind of been the story of my career where I just, just hustle and really persevered through it and then just climb my way to wherever I can go and try and make the most of that opportunity. And I'm kind of in a similar position again if I want to go back into the league and, try to win. Again, it'd be a similar journey and it's just funny how I keep ending up in that scenario. But it is very motivating, I think. Earlier in my career, that I use that as like a big source of motivation. I think after 2020, I was dropped from academy after I was on TSM Academy, which we were a strong roster at the time. I think we came second to C9,
You had Peter
and then
Zhang
from that,
as a coach, right?
yeah, Peter Zhang is coach.
Gonna have to
Funnily
get some
enough,
stories
I
about that.
funnily enough, I did send him some money, but I did get the money back, so I might have been the only one. But yeah. So after that 2020 year, I was dropped from academy for um Hanser at the time, which their plan on TSM was they had Huni, so they wanted a veteran backup in case the Huni option didn't work out, which is fair to them at the time. But considering like I couldn't find a team for the next year following, like I had a pretty decent split in academy, was surprising to me. And that at that point I was an amateur, so I went from academy LCS back to academy to amateur. And then at that point, it was the lowest, because you typically, once you're an amateur, at that point, it's really hard to grind your way back to the top or, even get back into LCS. But I think just a lot of anger is what drove me, where it's like just being overlooked really fueled me to just keep persevering. And then that's kind of been the story of how I got back into LCS. And that was on CLG at the time, and then went to NRG, and then we had a run there. But yeah, now I find myself in a similar position at the end of 2025 and at the beginning of 2025 as well. So
It's interesting, isn't
it
it?
does
Because
repeat itself.
it's such a thing where, from what I understand, I've heard people talk about kind of that up and down. I think Contracts was on the sack down at one point, and he had a similar journey, not quite going down to amateur, but the up and down nature of what Academy to LCS is like. And it must be a thing where it's so difficult to evaluate your stock because League quite often, for those who don't necessarily understand League that well, and I'm one of these people, but I can kind of infer from talking to people that do know about it. It's a thing where it's so hard to evaluate individual performance because it can be so contingent on factors that are outside of like the frame of understanding. So like a top laner might do really well, but then it's like a person who understands the game is like, well, his jungler ints him every game. Like that sounds like a really unfair way of putting it. But it's like there are so many factors, and because the lower level of play is quite a lot lower in amateur and in academy, how hard is it then to grind your way up? Because then it becomes a thing of like, wow, it's not as easy for me to look as good, maybe potentially.
Yeah, I pretty much never in my career thought about looking good in terms of play. And it's always been like, for me, I've always thought of myself in terms of like, am I laning well in this matchup against my counterparts in a similar position if they were playing the same matchup? Or like, what's like it's very matchup dependent. Like how does one player fare in this matchup compared to another? I don't necessarily play the game to like, oh, give me all the kills and look good. I pretty much I pretty much don't care about KDA, maybe to a very bad extent where I might die a little too much. But I think judging players is based off like for sure laning skill, and I think just how they integrate into the team and culture, and just like as a player, I think it's very overlooked in terms of like yes, you bring a lot of skill to the team, but you don't want to end up in a position where, for example, like um, at the end of the year, everyone just dislikes each other and you can't really get it together and make it work at the end of the year, regardless of skill. I think, a situation that comes to mind is like FlyQuest, off the top of my head, where, they really fell apart, even though they had a really good, strong domestic year. By the end of it, they look just, nothing like themselves. So I think you need the whole person and personalities have to mesh. And I think that's kind of how you should evaluate players, in my opinion, like a complete assessment of them.
I guess I get what you're saying completely, and I wasn't implying in any way that you're a player who prefers to look good, but my question was more along the lines of when you're in an environment where maybe like macro isn't being played out to the best extent, it can be quite hard to utilize your full skill set and show off like how complete of a player you are if certain things aren't being done. So like it's one of these things where it's like you're almost it's like being like a really really good chef, but you work in like a really shit kitchen. It's like how good of a meal can you make, and how easy is it to be discovered from that point on, especially with like less visibility. I guess my question more so is just when there's less visibility, less eyes on you, and you're down in that place, how difficult is it to come back up?
Yeah, I mean it's very difficult because I think in the past it was much easier to make it since there was like challenger or like hitting top challenger had more weight to it. There was academy, so there was just more eyes on the scene, and then um, there wasn't necessarily cross tournaments between the players, but there was just more eyes in terms of just people scouting and watching of like who's good and who's not. And nowadays it just doesn't exist as much. Um, so I think currently it's pretty hard to climb out of like an amateur place to make it to LCS unless you're just, you know, above and beyond talented. Like part of it is marketing. Like you have to be visible to people that you are good, and um, you know, I think visibility is the biggest issue. I think skill, if you're in challenger, then you typically do have what it takes to be pro, but it's just about consistency. And obviously, the top players who are like very good, they will get found out eventually, but it's just much harder these days than it was previously.
Would you consider it a controversial statement off the back of what you said? Immediately, what springs to mind to me, and I'm quite friendly with him. But do you think that Srtty got an LCS spot off of a marketing campaign essentially, or how
I
much of a
mean,
part did it play?
yeah, I think, I mean, that definitely had to do with it for sure. I mean, I think at the time where he did get picked up, like I thought he was deserving of it. But it's hard to discredit. Like he definitely had a lot of you know, s- marketing going for him, but I think it was deserved. I think he was playing really well at the time. So, I mean, that's actually a clear example of like, yes, marketing can open other people's eyes to you, where if he did all that without branding himself in the way of like, I'm the next upcoming like top laner in the league, then probably wouldn't have get garnered that much attention. Maybe would still have offers, but maybe not as competitive, or not, just monetarily wouldn't be as high, but it definitely plays a factor into it.
It's a bit of a lore reveal. I'm actually the person who helped him. The Reddit post that went really viral of his, the rank one post that he made on Reddit that went super viral. I'm actually the one who ghostwrote that for him. So that's a little bit of a lore drop for people out there. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because whilst I think deserving, stock is such a thing that is ironically influenced by random people out there and viewers. I'm sure you remember a few years ago, like a big part, at least it felt like to me, he was deserving as well. And in having these discussions, you're not suggesting that anyone isn't deserving. But Jack Spectre was another famous example for me in the LEC. It felt like everyone wanted him in, and there was such a push from the fans. It's almost like when people see that, they're like, oh, there's going to be a positive boost from having this player, and it adds to it. So I guess that circles back to what I was talking to you about for being someone, and obviously you've taken more of a concern with marketing and branding this year at the end of it. Not to say that you weren't concerned with it before, but it's definitely an uptick. how hard is it when like visibility is not on you to make that push through because you haven't experienced this like marketing campaign behind you to boost you that extra margin?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult. It's just it's not necessarily nepotism, but it's for sure networking where you know, you have to have players vouch for you or coaches vouch for you, or just need to have an opportunity where you can present yourself to, you know, coaches or GMs of the team. Just have some way to stand out because, you know, other than that, like who's really watching, you know, solo queue at this point, or just, you know, matches where it just the eyes are just not there in the scene as much these days. So it's just tremendously difficult to make it from amateur to pro or just like solo queue to pro.
Who were some of those people? Because you talk about it, it's not quite nepotism. It's more just like there's kind of like a wider neural network of people that are like, oh, he's good, and then it just ends up being like a monopoly of, or like, yeah, monopoly of just a chance. And he said I'm good. He said I'm good. Who are some of those
I'm
people that
not
kind of?
sure, honestly. I don't know. It's the unknown, right? It's like you don't know who's making these decisions, where these narratives are coming from behind the scenes of like who you are as a player. I think every player has an opinion on um, each other in terms of like, is this guy good? Is this guy not good? But ultimately, the decider of that is I'm not sure. I think within a team, right? Like people will just talk about other players, and then that might get to the coach and just like overhearing conversations, and then it's just like a rumor in high school that might spread, something like that, right? It's like
So you
to me
actually
that's
you have no idea of like who might have gotten you on Optic or TSM Academy or NRG or 100 Thieves, like who was like saying like, oh, Dokla's good, get Dokla in.
well, Optic I do know. It was their analyst at the time, and me and him, we were on a team in like amateur previously before that. So I that was one connection there, and then TSM was a situation with Parth, where he was
Fellow
surprised
brown
where I
boy,
was.
first two
Yeah, he
brown
was
boys to get
surprised
it
I
popping in
was.
an A.
Yeah, he was surprised I was still at that time I was pretty young and I had no I was very naive in terms of how offseason works and how you have to approach teams and reach out. So luckily he was there where there was a TSM scouting combine which I was able to attend, luckily, and I was able to prove myself there. And then after that, the opportunity on TL came about where I was an amateur at the time and I got picked up by TL where um, the situation with Alfari happened, and then they needed a sub for their academy team, so I was an option for them, and I got picked up there. And then following that, I think we went to the finals, or we won a finals, and then came second in some other tournaments. So after that, I had more eyes on me back in the scene of just visibility in terms of competing. So I got another opportunity there. So it's just a lot of luck, I would say, it comes down to in terms of you have to be, you know, luck is an opportunity or is a mixture of, you know, being at the right place, right time, but and then the opportunity might present itself, and it's up to you to just, you know, put yourself in a position where it may find you there. So, I mean, for sure, it was just luck. And the first team I got started on was in OPL,
Yeah, I
like it
remember.
was in both, yeah,
Play
and
with
that was
FBI, right?
purely,
That was the first time you played with
yeah, that
FBI.
was with FBI, and that was just purely off like a Twitter DM from someone, and that just happened because I was high on the challenger rankings, and that team needed a top laner at the time. So a lot of it has to do with luck, at least for my career. Can't speak
Is that
on.
because I remember
Um,
seeing going and reading back on your Twitter and seeing that you'd like traveled through Vietnam around that time and places like that. Was that via qualification? I don't know if you like went to some sort of like international qualification or what were you doing in Vietnam and places like that back in like 2017?
yeah, that was for Rift Rivals. So the team I joined was
Okay.
already qualified for Rift Rivals between spring and summer. So I just happened to join a team that was already going to an international event. So again, another lucky experience I was able to have there.
Who did you
So
play
yeah, a lot of
against
it came
at
down
Rift
to luck.
Rivals?
We played against Japan and Vietnam or Vietnamese teams. I remember we played
I think you
against GAM was
Gam.
like
You
the
got played Gam, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we had it was like a King of the Hill kind of tournament where it's like each region would have like three teams represent them, and then you'd have to get through all the teams, and then the winner of it was just a King of the Hill format, and then GAM was just clearly the best team in that tournament, but we beat the two teams below them, but we just couldn't beat GAM because I mean at that point I was a rookie. Our team was just full of new players. If I look back at it now, I didn't know anything I was doing. I played like two champs, like Fiora and Jace. I didn't really have much of a champ pool, or very young back then, but somehow made it work.
Do you have any crazy stories from Vietnam, like traveling around at that time? Because you would have been
Yeah,
about
I
20
mean,
years old back
so
then.
we were in solo queue, and then we had super counts, and then I think some people in the game in the Vietnam solo queue saw us, and then they're like, are you guys pro?" And then yeah, we ended up chatting, and then funny thing is we ended up meeting them. They drove us on their scooters, and then they just met us, and then we went to a little coffee shop. So that was a pretty cool experience where just random solo queue players, we ended up hanging out with them in person.
That's really, really wholesome. I think I saw the photo of that on your Twitter back then. What was it like meeting? Because he's obviously a player that you went on to team with later and kind of play and make it to a top 8 worlds with. What was it like meeting FBI for the first time?
For the first time, honestly, I didn't really have an opinion of my teammates because I was just really kind of a passenger. In that, like, I think I was 18 or 19 at the time. My brain wasn't developed at all, really. Kind of just listened, and didn't really have anything to add. But I thought I didn't know what to expect because this is my first like professional team in a gaming house. I just thought they were funny people, and we all were playing League. So, I was kind of just living my dream at the time where, I would go fly to Australia to play. That's the state of how bad I wanted to just pursue that dream was at the time.
But I mean, I guess my biggest question would be, you spend so much time with him nowadays. Like, what are the
Yeah,
biggest ways he's changed, like as a person? Because it's like you almost like when you're around when it's like 8 years difference. When I look at like potential friendships or people I've known over the course of 8 to 10 years, it's like we basically go from being kids to being fully grown adults. What was he like back then
yeah.
compared to now?
I mean, back then is very similar in terms of personality, where he's just always making jokes about pretty much everything, including teammates. There's a lot of banters. Australians love to banter between each other, and it's very similar to what type of relationship we have now in our team environment, where we're just always making fun of each other and making fun of ourselves. Be like, "Wow, I'm so shit," or someone messed up. Just a lot of banter, and I really enjoy that personally because I think it's just a good team environment to have. And I think by far he's probably the best teammate I've had in terms of just personality. I think he really meshes the team well together, more so than any other player I've been with.
Is that something that you think people kind of don't get in the narrative about FBI? Because for me, like from what I understand, it's like a thing where like he's won an LCS, he's gone to multiple finals, but no one ever looks at him like if you announce the FBI is coming to a team, no one's like, oh wow, we've just signed an elite level talent. Do you think that's maybe something that goes underlooked in like him slotting into a team, that he's a really good mesh for a team and he's like a personality fit?
Yeah, because he just doesn't really do socials. So people realistically don't know anything about him outside of like some content, and he hates doing content. So um, he's just very like isolated individual in terms of like he commits himself fully to the team, but he doesn't really care about like presenting himself in terms of like in front of a camera or anything like that. So obviously it's hard to understand the impact that he has if you're not necessarily directly involved with him. But so yeah, I get it is very underlooked aspect of him.
Why does he hate doing content so much? Because if he's cracking jokes all the time, it's kind of quite antithetical.
I'm not sure because I guess he doesn't see the value of that in terms
Interesting.
of just talking to fans and maybe interviews stupid questions all the time. That's definitely got to do a part of it. Um, and there's
Just wait until he gets on one of these.
yeah, exactly. Hey, there's no way you would get him on this, that's for sure.
Wow, just watch me. What when you say that you love the banter with each other, you kind of mentioned it's about, oh, I'm so shit, but like, are there particular things that you love to give him shit for and he loves to give you shit for? I kind of wanted an insight because like I know with me when I've got mates that are close, it's always like one thing that they do that you want to take the piss out of them for.
Yeah, I mean, the latest one was him getting caught by Faker's Talia W, where um, he had flash up. I think you know, and then we were just giving him shit for it. But he was hard on himself too at that point, where it's like, yeah, you know, I really fucked it up. But you know, we was sort of like, goddamn, Vic, we would be in a better position if you just flash a Talia W. Now you're making him look like Faker. Again. So you know, he's very open-minded in terms of criticism towards himself, but he also can be the punching bag and also has an ego and be like, um, you know, we'll call you out as well. It's like FBI always gets caught on midway, so that's always a joke within our teams. Like, FBI, why are you dying on mid all the time? Look at Ruler, is he dying on mid all the time? Like, we always joke about that. And then if he does some dumb shit, it's easy to just brush it off with jokes and still get to the point of like what you want to have him change, but go about that in a friendly or like a banter conversation where it does get resolved, but it's not just like everyone's so defensive about it. It's just a more positive way to get to the point.
And what are people giving you shit for? Like, what's the joke about Dhokla?
Dying on side lane probably. That's probably the most common one. And then outside of that,
You used to cycle. You used to cycle to work a lot. Did you never get taken the piss out of for that?
no, I don't. I don't think so.
If you did that in the UK, like everyone would call you a bike wanker. They'd be like, bike wanker, bike wanker.
No, I mean, I'm not gonna drive a car or Uber. I mean, these guys are dumb as hell. They'll Uber. They'll pay like I don't know, like $10 every day going in, coming. Like, why would you just burn money essentially when you could either walk or just bike or have a different mode of transit? I mean, I think they're just dumb if they're just wasting money like that. But to be fair, they're getting paid a lot more than me, so I guess they could do whatever they want with their money. So for me, it's like it just didn't make economical sense.
Do you go the full distance with it, the bike? Are you like dressed up in your little cycling shorts, or you just kind of chill with it?
No, no. I mean, I would just throw on some sweatshirts, bike to the office.
Fair enough.
You
So
know.
you don't go the full performative distance because a lot of people who cycle are really annoying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen the videos like, get out of my way. What are you doing? I'm on the road here. As bike lane, but they don't really have bike lanes here in LA. Majority of the city, so that's not really that big of a culture here.
I kind of wanted to take back just because we talked about this off season, but kind of wanted to bring you back to the beginning of your life because you've got quite an interesting story. You obviously immigrated to Massachusetts, I believe, from India at the age of 5. And the only
Yep.
reason I think that I know that that's not like a tragic story, because if it was, they would have made an episode of Drive about it. So, um, so obviously,
Yeah.
clearly not a lot of like generational trauma there. Oh, maybe there is. I don't know. I wanted to ask you about that journey for you and what that was like growing up as a someone from that was born in India coming to the US.
To be fair, my first real memories were just like leaving India and coming to US, and that's essentially where like what I remember as a kid. I don't really remember too far back outside of just leaving India and coming to the US. So pretty much my life in my head started here, at least from what I can remember. So to me, it's just like normal. And I just grew up here as an immigrant in that sense, where you know, just if you grow up in an Asian household, you know, education is highly valued, and you know, playing games is not valued at all. So there's a lot of contention between me and my parents about just playing. Um, and I'm surprised. I mean, you just don't see a lot of Indians or Asians necessarily in the position of like being pro, just because you know parents are you know quite against you just spending all your free time playing games where you could just be you know studying for school and all that. So you know, I would consider myself an exception for sure. Funny stories. I think I saw um, an Indian fan come to the LCS one day, and then he was there with his parents, and then I immediately knew like
You knew you had to
just
go
the
and
way I knew. I was like, when I saw them in the van, I talked to the parents like, yo, you should let him play more games. And then the dad is like, no, no, he's got to study for school. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I tried. Like, I tried.
that is so funny.
Yeah, so and not a lot of people persevere in that sense of like just you know keep going with really no end in sight where you know education is highly valued.
How did you avoid like kind of playing games, because I remember for me, like I obviously come from like a white household where like ironically like my parents like it's literally the most like stereotypical white family I come from. Like like my parents never cared what I did. Like my dad like found a bong on top of my cupboard when I was like 14 and like just like
What
told me
the
off.
hell?
He like told me off for it, and then I was grounded for a week, and then I just carried on. You know,
1 week?
yeah, like a
That's
week.
it?
Like that's the kind of family I come from. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was strict and abusive in other ways. Let's just say that, but very
Mhm.
like liberal in terms of allowing me to do what I wanted to. So, but I remember like for example, like if I wanted to play like DS or on my laptop, like I'd be like under the covers, like pretending, or like I remember like when my dad used to make me leave my laptop downstairs when I got into my bedroom, and I used to like crawl downstairs like at night and like open the door really quietly and then like bring it back
Yeah.
upstairs and then like put it back in the morning. What kind of ways were you avoiding your parents' wrath to pursue pro and
Yeah,
playing at
well,
that time?
luckily I could get away with playing in front of my mom, but definitely not in front of my dad. He'd get really upset. So, but my dad came home late at night. He'd work 2 jobs, so I wouldn't see him for majority of the day until like 8. So after school, I would just play all that I can, and then do homework after, and then just I'd just wake up at like 4 or 5 in the morning, pretty much in high school. That's when I really got addicted to League, and I just wake up, play a couple of games in the morning, go to school, and then play the rest of the day, do homework at night, and just repeat that cycle. And it's just unimaginable to me now where it's like I was that addicted to League, where it's like I would sacrifice that much sleep. Like I was probably sleeping like 4 hours, 5 hours maybe, and that was for like a consistent period of time. And I'd just be tired as hell in school. Didn't really take caffeine at the time. Didn't even know the concept of caffeine or any like supplements or anything like that, energy drinks. Um, so yeah, it was just that's just what you had to do when you really enjoy League that much, and it was my passion at the time. And I just enjoyed it just because it was just fun. Not even like I wasn't even good then. I was probably like silver or like um, when I started I was silver, and then eventually I got better and better. But it's just what I wanted to do and just play. And since I was so limited in terms of when I can play,
You
that just
cherished it
drove
even
me
more.
more to like just do everything I could to play more and more.
It's so intriguing
Yeah.
to hear that. So when did you get to a point where it was like, oh, I could actually make it doing this, or at least I want to pursue this a bit further?
I think once I hit Challenger, it opened up the idea of playing
What
pro.
age did you hit Challenger?
I think 17 or 18. Definitely no like Prodigy when I was like 13, but I probably started playing the game when I was 15, so I already missed the train there, but um, or like 14. But yeah, probably around 18, I think I was like, hey, maybe, I should. This was my passion. I didn't even know like how to be pro, but at the time it was like if you were top of Challenger, you'd have a good chance of like, getting scouted. So my aim was to, just try to do the best I can and climb in Challenger. Um, and it would just sort itself out in my head. I was very naive at the time of how everything would happen, so it just kept playing and playing, and opportunity did come, but it was uh, very, very luckily how I got to be pro. Like, I mean, I was in college, but I didn't necessarily go to class in college because that was my first time away from home, and I was unsupervised. So all I was doing was just playing league, and luckily I did get a chance to go pro, and I just took it immediately. But I do feel bad because I kind of just burned my parents' money, and I probably should have taken a gap year and told my parents like, hey, this is something I want to do. But I think I just didn't have the communication skills to necessarily tell my parents like, hey, this is something I want to do. And I also don't know how receptive they would have been at the time, given the traditional path is just like you go to school, you go to college, you get a degree in whatever field is going to pay well, and then you just go live that life. So very breaking of the norms is what I did.
So it's interesting because when as conversation I had with Sanchovies when I was interviewing him, and he was talking about like, oh, being from like an Arab family, it was very much a thing of like when he got away from that environment for the first time, it was like you kind of your ankle weights come off. And I know from people I went to school with, it's like a thing of like when you have that kind of watchful gaze on you and expectations and kind of that traditional kind of Indian or Arab family or any sort of immigrant family. What kind of freedoms were you exploring when you went off to uni? Because it's like, oh wow, like no one knows what I'm getting up to. I can just kind of do whatever I want. Did you go wild, or was it literally just you were just playing League?
No, it's just a league. Like I didn't go. I went to like quote unquote party school. It was known for being a party school, but I pretty much didn't go party at all. I just really enjoyed league. I mean, that was my pure passion at the time. And it'd be the same thing where I would sacrifice a lot of sleep, um, just play and just play and play and play, and it just so happened to work out. But I would not do that again, and I would advise everyone if you're in a similar position, do not do that. Like, especially now. I think back then maybe it can work out for you, but nowadays, like it's just the opportunity is so low where it's the barrier for entry is just so incredibly high where I would not risk that
I
ever.
suppose
And
the
if I could,
biggest advertisement from your perspective is, hey, I made top eight at Worlds at 2023, and then I couldn't even get a job next year.
yeah, best case scenario, you're gonna end up with just wasting your whole youth. Don't do it. Yeah.
So in terms of like you said you wouldn't do it again, and you kind of alluded to potentially like feeling like wasting youth and stuff like this. What could you have done differently? Like what would Dokla's life look like if you hadn't, spent all this time not sleeping and playing League?
I don't know. I'd probably be. I didn't really know what my passion was outside of league, so and I've thought about it. It's like, what would I do, or where would I be? I mean, I'd probably just be in some traditional job, maybe computer science, follow what my brother did, or just some sort of, doctor, engineer, lawyer, something like that. Probably is what would have happened. But
Breaking the
I'm still glad.
stereotypes.
I mean, it's because that's probably what was gonna happen. I didn't necessarily have an idea of what I wanted to be, and league just so happened to work out where it's like I was able to pursue my passion, and it ended up working out. But I would place a lot of it on luck where it did work out instead of just um yeah, just the way that it happened. I would say a lot of it was just very lucky.
So like we kind of it was really funny to hear the anecdote you told about like the Indian family who came to the LCS studio. But it's like, do you have like the kind of thing where like in an anecdote I always hear from like people I know is this thing of like if they've done a career like this, and I weirdly experience this in a similar way. So like my little brother is 15, my smallest brother. I've got two brothers. The smallest one is 15. And like he's getting a lot of pressure from my dad, similarly to how he gave to me, like, oh, you need to do well in your exams, go to uni and stuff like this. And like he's quite often just been like, well, Jake just didn't go to uni and like he makes video game fucking YouTube videos. Like, why do I need to do any of this? So it's like, do you exist in like do you exist as like an annoying thorn in like your family's examples or like wider like cousin stories of like, well, Dokla went and did this?
No, I mean I am the youngest, so um I wouldn't necessarily get compared to my brother since we're only like a year apart in terms of schooling.
You have how many
So
brothers? Just one or two?
just one older brother. So we were pretty much right behind each other in terms of just grade. So it's a very easy path for me to just follow in terms of um we didn't even get to college, but by the time he went to college, I was pretty much right behind him. At that point, I was playing so much league where it kind of just became my life in the sense, and I was able to go to college when undeclared. But no, I don't necessarily get compared like that, and probably luckily so. And everyone in my family side, they're pretty much like dentists, um, gonna be a doctor or something like that. It's like I'm like the black sheep of the family, where it's like I've really strayed off the traditional path. So yeah, definitely don't compare myself to others, and I would advise don't follow my path either. Like I think what I did was incredibly dumb, and I think the worst thing is like I just wasted my parents' money in terms of college because yeah, I mean all of that is sees no fruition at this point. So obviously I'm in a position where I am able to repay him my parents back, but they obviously wouldn't accept it. But if it didn't work out, it would have been just disastrous where that couple years of tuition is just completely gone.
For sure. And you talked about your brother being a year older than you. Was he also playing games with you at a certain time?
Yeah, he's the one who got me into League. Him and my best friend at the time, all they would talk about was just League on the bus. Like coming home from school, at school, outside of school when we hang out. Like it's just League, League, League. It's like, oh my God, Master Yi is so OP. Oh my God, Kennen is like the best champ in the game. And then eventually, I think my brother went to get groceries outside, and then he's like, "Hey, just take over and just play and just, and I had no idea what I was looking at, and that was like my first introduction to League. And from that point on, I kind of just got really into League. I was like a PC or console player at the time, played a lot of COD, but after that like first introduction to League, it kind of really um, sucked me into the world of MMO or MOBAs, and from that point on, all I did was really play League.
It's interesting to see you were a Call of Duty player before. What kind of a Call of Duty player? Because someone that we're going to talk about later had an anecdote about being a Call of Duty player. Bwipo, when he was growing up, played a lot of Call of Duty. And an
Yeah,
interesting thing that kind of we was created as a kind of an analogous comparison was he always really liked using the noob tube, and that was a
yeah.
philosophy he always carried in every game, is to be as annoying as possible. Some would say he carried that out in real life as well, but he like a philosophy. It's interesting how game philosophy can carry about. So I want to know what kind of a player you were in Call of Duty, and if it translated to the player you became in League.
Yeah, I was very oriented for the victory, I would say, because I played a lot of domination back in the day, and I wouldn't be a noob two player, but I'd be like for Monfort 2 specifically and Monfort 3. I mean, I kind of use everything, but the main class for those who know is like UMP, ACR, just like the standard, the most standard guns,
What
and
was your
just
play style
I
though?
would
Like,
just
are you a kill whore? Like, what are we talking about? Are you a camper? Like,
no, I would just play to frag out and then just get kill streaks, drop a nuke all the time. And I would just play to win. I wouldn't necessarily play to like be annoying or have fun or like experiment too much.
okay.
Most of it was just like I just want to win, and that was kind of what drove me. And then in Modern 3, I think it was probably the COD I played the most. I in domination, I was like top 300, and I was playing like some other guy who was also like top 300, and we were really just sweating out every lobby in that game where it's like we're just full try harding to win. And yeah, so I did have my phase of new tubing, but I thought it was like so I only did it because other people were doing it and it was just so cringe. I'm like, all right, I need to have some payback here, inflict some damage back to them. But I wouldn't. My primarily function wouldn't be to like noob tube. Yeah.
That's interesting because it, for someone who played a lot of Call of Duty in America to then go and play for Optic, that must have been quite exciting, no? Because
Yeah, yeah,
surely,
actually. Yeah, so when I first joined Optic, I was like, holy shit, I know this org. And when I joined the org, I was like, this is gonna be great. I've seen so many videos on Optic, like I know all the content creators, I know Hex. And then when I get there, they were in the phase where they sold the company off to VC people, and Hex didn't really have ownership of the team and wasn't really involved. I did see him, I think, twice, one time in Texas and one time in LA, but it's not what the Optic I envisioned, where it's like, they're doing a lot of content, and yeah, everything expectation wise was completely not what I expected of how
that
it
that
to
must
go.
have been
So
like kind of like a delayed like finding out the Tooth Fairy wasn't real. Because like I remember for me, like that was like my Roman Empire when I was like 12. Is like watching like
yeah.
Scump videos and like all of like the vlogs in the house. So what was that like? Did that kind of like kill your like almost like teenage quote unquote innocence? Where you go to this team, and it's like you look up to all these people and like it's just shit and like it's not there. Like
Yeah, I was like, What is going on here?" It's like I didn't know they were so like. I thought I was gonna join like a really the top org in the league, because like Optic was just so well known at the time in terms of in the shooting gaming sphere, where it's like they were the org. It's like TSM and LCS at the time, like that
yeah.
was the premier org, and I was like, holy shit, Optic Gaming carried a lot of weight back in the day. So yeah, I was really it was a big shock where it's like what is going on here? you know, when they were in the league, you know, everything was last minute in terms of like we were in Texas. We were the only academy team in Texas because that's just where like their headquarters was while all the teams were in LA. They were just late to offseason because they were in franchising like last. They didn't really have good facilities. Like we were working out of WeWork in like the first year, which is pretty funny to think about. But they got their act together like a little bit the following year, but that first year was really it was just like what is going on really? Like what is going on?
Do you have any other like crazy stories from that period of time? Because I mean, like working in a WeWork for a year, it's just that is just wild.
Um I guess I was surprised because like we were first of all we were in Texas and our only PCs were at like the office, which was like a kind of like a corporate office. Like I thought we'd be in like a gaming house and all that, but we did have a house, but no PCs in the house, and then we had to like make a plea to the COO or like CEO or whoever was running operation at the time, like, hey, can we get PCs in the house? Because we'd have to stay in at the office till like you know just late at night to play, and then we'd have to Uber back like 20 minutes to get to our house, and then no PCs at the office or at the house. So that was like a big shock. We're like, you know, what is this? Like I thought this was Optic. I thought, you know, like it's very player friendly. It's like, you know, everything would be like professional and set up in that sense. But so that was like the one big shock. Other stories out of Optic, I think just the compared to like every other team, just working out of WeWork was kind of funny if you think about it now. It's like you're in a shared office space, and then it's just companies that are like you know starting all that, and then you
Were you
just see
like
a bunch of
scrimming there? So
gamers.
it's just like you just
Yeah,
like showing
we were
each other like
screaming there,
fucking
and it was
come
like
top, you dog, and then it's just you see someone in like a Zoom call in the next cubicle or something.
exactly, exactly. It's like an open plan, so it's like every time you walk by the hall, there's like you can kind of like see into like what everyone's doing. So it's like then you just in one room and it's just like 8 PCs, just a bunch of kids playing, and then you walk by and it's like some guys on a business meeting. Yeah, so definitely a bit surprising of how that went.
So
Yeah,
so that's your time on Optic, and then from Optic, I think you went to um
that was the first year though. The second year we had our own office and all that, and it was a lot
wasn't
better. But
there?
the
I
first year, yeah.
remember there's somewhere in my research that I've done on you at some point. I remember an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm was filmed outside the office for Optic, wasn't it? At some point.
Yeah, it was right downstairs at like a restaurant, and at that time I was a big Curb fan, so I saw. I think it was his name is. I want to get it right. Leon from the show, but I forgot what the actor's real name is. But
Um,
yeah, I saw him. I was like, holy shit, that's so cool. I saw you know, just it being filmed. I was pretty. That was my first experience like LA in terms of like, wow, I can see the production actually happening of shows I watch.
what kind of shows do you like enjoy? Because Curb is like it's a really good show, and I'm quite used to when I speak to players them just having the most abysmal taste known to mankind. So I'm
Yeah,
interested.
I like Curb. Andor is a recent favorite of mine.
Okay, okay.
Like sports documentaries. I think F1 Drive Survive was a good series. Like and I want to talk about how I think really the way the league should have modeled their social media, it should have been modeled after F1 because I think they did an excellent job of, you know, bringing eyes to their league where it's like after F1 Drive to Survive dropped on Netflix, like every other sport is like following the model of just following the players and creating a narrative about them and showing them behind the scenes of how all that looks like. And we did have that initially with like TSM Legends, Team Liquid having their own docu-series of teams, but I think it should have been like Riot-led initiative where it's like it showcases all the teams and you know you can choose a player from each team or what have you. But side tangent there, but I really saw the similarities between F1 and like what the lack of like Riot was doing in terms of branding themselves. And it was just like, how is this possible? Where it's like pretty much every traditional sport is going down the path of having a docu-series of their sport, and we're still not at that point yet. And we're in esports, so it's like, more accessible in that sense. So that was a big surprise. But other shows, The Boys is really good. I think it's a great parallel into current day environment. But yeah, I haven't watched a show
I had a
lately,
quick
but
question for you because
yeah.
it's kind of an interesting angle on what you're talking about. Given that you're so outspoken about you think that the LCS or Riot should have led these player-driven things, for you as a person that seemingly has a content brain, especially from recent events, who are players that you've encountered in your career that you've played with or you've known or you've gotten to know them and what they're about that you've gone, well, hang on, you're really interesting. There should be more content about you. Is there any players that you think have gone massively underlooked in your career?
I think FBI, because I feel like he's just the most unknown. I know him quite well, but I think to the general audience, like he's fairly unknown in terms of his personality. That's one. I think even some of our coaches, I think Spooks is a really funny guy, and he's relatively unknown of how much value he provides to the team in terms of just vibes. Um, there is a lot of players. I think there's a story within most players. It's just you know, what type of angle you want to show and put on. So, but those two for sure off the top of my head.
If you were the producer of like one of these like F1 Drive to Survive style LCS things of your own episode, like if you're sat down at the meeting with all the producers and you say, "This is the story I want you to tell," what's like the unknown Dhokla story that you want people to kind of understand about you?
Um, I find myself compared to like Haas in terms of I don't know if you watch F1 Drive to Survive,
No,
but
not really.
like so this team Haas is like kind of a shit team, but they still have people that care about them because just of the narrative of like you're in a bad spot, but it just portrays like you're working with what you have, and um, there's still a story to tell in the grind of like you might not have the most resources, you might not be good, but there's still a story, and people are still invested in that story. So it's like even if you're not just winning everything, like there's still a story to tell in terms of just the underdog. And I guess that kind of portrays my early portion of my career where it's like just the underdog mentality and what it takes to get to the top and what that mentality entails. And yeah, I think that would be a pretty good story to tell.
So from that point onwards, you say you went Optic, and then where do you go next?
Optic to TSM Academy, and then from there to Amateur to TL Academy to CLG Academy to CLG to NRG to Team List to 100 Thieves.
And I think you mentioned you don't really have. For me, Peter Zhang is the most interesting figure, or one of the most interesting figures, because it's just like he's almost like the kind of like if Moses like set a plague upon like the LCS for like their crimes of franchising and wasting money. Like they just got sent this like biblical plague of like financial pestilence in that he just like stole a load of money and shit like this. You said that you borrowed money, he borrowed money from you and you got it back or something, but was there any other anecdotes of like working with him? Because like we don't hear that much behind the scenes. We hear the crazy stories. Like we've heard like the was there like the player who had his VODs, like he pretended the VODs were knights or
Oh,
something?
right, right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But
I
like,
think it was
what was your
Wakaido.
what were your encounters with Peter Zhang?
Honestly, I thought he was like the first coach that made sense in terms of like if we, disregard what he's done. I think as a coach, I think he was a very good coach in the sense of, he had strong opinions on, every role. I felt like he actually understood the game quite well, and he had a vision of how he wanted the game to be played. And yeah, to me, that was the first coach that I was like, wow, I can respect his
You got to be
opinion.
careful here because I feel like too often do I hear about people that've done bad things. He had a vision. That's quite that's quite
Yeah, vision is steal a lot of money as well,
yeah.
but I'm talking about in the league sense. We
Yeah,
can,
yeah,
we
no, I
can,
know. I'm only
we,
taking the
we'll get
piss.
to it eventually, but yeah, I think just purely league, I thought he was a pretty good coach in terms of, with the coaches I've worked in the past. I feel like they didn't necessarily give me guidance on, what I should be doing or how I need to play really, because at that time I still really had no idea what I was doing. So so as a coach I thought he was good, but obviously as a person, eventually I was very naive at the time, so it's like, I gave him money, and then I did get the money back, but obviously some people did not, and
What was he? What
I
was he?
kind
What was he asking you money for? Like, what was the story?
of I think it's I don't want to say something I'm not 100% confident, but it was just money because he just was strapped for cash, so like he needed money for something, and he's like, okay, I'll give it back next time I get paid. And I'm like, I was I was too naive to think about like why does the coach who's probably getting paid more than me need money? So I just gave it to him. I think it was like 1K or like 2K, and then he treated me out for dinner as like a token for doing that. So I mean I got my money back, so I'm not necessarily
So basically, what you're saying is all these other people they might have got scammed, but I got a nice dinner out of it. So who's really the
no, no, I
loser?
mean obviously you feel for them because just getting scammed is just obviously someone's getting hurt there, so
Of
it's
course,
pretty
of course.
unfortunate for
Well,
those
Lion, I'm
affected.
taking
But
the piss, man. Like I'm not like a bastard, you know. Like I'm not like a horrible person. Like,
yeah,
play ball with me, you know. Like,
yeah.
have you ever experienced the esports scam? I feel like everyone I've spoken to has been scammed at some capacity in their career. Have you been lucky enough to avoid that, or?
I mean, I've been scammed by agents. They don't do anything for me and they take my money, so I was scammed in that sense. No, but luckily I wasn't really scammed. Um, yeah, so I guess I count myself lucky in that sense.
Let's get on to NRG as a period because you're a team that kind of. I hope you don't take this in the wrong way, but it is still insane to me that you guys managed to win an LCS title because it's like the names on paper. It's fair to say that you were the underdogs, like as you represented previously, as being a point of interest for you guys. You massively overperformed and you managed to actually win a title. Talk to me about that year. Talk to me about that run. You can start at any point, but it's such a point of intrigue for me.
Yeah, I think the turning point. So the turning point for that season um, was I think we lost to TSM and we we gave LeBlanc, I think, which was pretty OP at the time, and we gave um, pretty much it just stemmed from like a bad draft, and FBI really did not like our coaches and of how that draft went and how shit we were playing together. So we had like a player meeting in terms of like we were just venting to each other in a more positive way. It was like me, FBI, Palafox, and then we kind of just said that, like just let it all out in terms of how we're feeling, and then that got that just made that was like the turning point for that split. And then from then on, I think we were the team that all beat the top teams and lost to the bottom teams. That was like our thing, where it's like we just win against the better teams and lose against the worst teams in terms of the standings, and it kind of made no sense. So we get into playoffs, and then my mindset going in is just I'm not sure we played first round. I think we played C9 first round and we got 3-0. I think we were in an upper bracket and we got 3-0. And then in my head, it was like the way we lost in that 3-0 was like they actually didn't necessarily like stomp us. Like obviously it was a 3-0. We did lose quite hard, but in my head, it was like we actually didn't get stomped. We just made, a few mistakes here and there. And that kind of gave us confidence. Where it's like, if we get a chance to redeem ourselves, like we feel confident that we'll be able to win. And then we made the lower bracket run, beat a few teams to get back to finals. I think the hardest series for me personally was against Golden Guardians. Like I was kind of getting shit on in lane. That was when Rumble was like very very strong, and I wanted to ban it, but teams like just play Cassante and just tank the lane. Obviously, I was looking back at it like I could play lane a little bit better in that series, but I was really getting smacked in that series, and that was our series to qualify to Worlds, I think. So I was very happy once I pretty much just got hard carry that series. So made Worlds then, and then we're going into finals weekend playing against Team Liquid. Um, Not really sure what to expect. APA was on that team at the time, and He was relatively a rookie. Did well in that series. Went to Game 5. Um, banger series the way it ended. Summit kind of just randomly died um, as like flanking mini Nar. I remember that. I was like, what the hell is just happening? And then we get to finals, and that was my first finals, and I didn't really appreciate it at the time of like how big that moment was. That was the first time for me playing in a finals in a stadium, which was kind of my goal when I started play pro. Like I just wanted to play in a stadium in front of fans, just in the most hype moments. And to me, that was like, okay, I've pretty much achieved my esports dream of just being where I wanted to. And then that day, I was just pretty locked in the sense of like in like flow state. And yeah, we were able to win the series 3-1, and it was a huge upset. You know, everyone predicted C9 was going to win, but for us, we felt like in that first series that we played in upper bracket, the way we lost was just it
Fine
was much
margins.
closer. It was just much closer than what people thought. So in my head, I thought we would win. Honestly, maybe that's just the confidence you need to have, or the level of delusion you need to have. But obviously, they probably feel like they didn't play the best on that day, and we felt like we played good. So obviously, there's two sides to that. But we felt confident that we are going to win, and we did. Um, so I was just really happy in that moment. That was probably my proudest moment because it felt like the culmination of just being at the bottom for so long and then finally winning when everyone doesn't really expect you to win. I just felt very proud of that moment.
For the layman that kind of maybe doesn't like could only appreciate the fact that whether you were winning or losing, when NRG was winning and they did win the LCS and obviously you went on to Worlds and you did well at Worlds, what was the way that NRG was winning? We talk about like ways and methods of victory. Like when you look back at that, what were your strongest tools, you think, as a team?
I think we were just cohesive as five. Like we were all individually solid and we just were cohesive. I think one thing that really separated us is like we just enjoyed playing with each other. There was no like turmoil within the team where I feel like at Worlds, like that typically happens with a lot of teams where it's like the most important time of the year, and then people will just really crumble under the pressure and just really lash out to teammates. Like issues stem from just
You're the
they were able
second person
to,
that Grabs talked about this. Grabs talked about how often the best team in summer is the one who survives the year without hating each other.
or by Worlds, but also I mean you can apply to summer as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and then to me in my head, I never understood that mindset. Like, why would you kind of like crash out at the literal most important time of the year? It's like this is actually when you want to put aside all of your differences and come together. Like crash out at the end of the year or like in interviews or something, it's like why would you it made no sense, or it still makes no sense to me. It was like how can you let differences really impact the most important time of the year, because this is what you played the whole year for. So for me it made no sense, and for our team we just had really good vibes. And yeah, we just played together cohesively, and we did get a very lucky draw in Energy 2023. Like we played EU twice. We played Mad Lions,
Mad Lions of
TL,
Fnatic and TL, yeah. And then you played G2, I think.
and then G2, and then
You did lose a
um,
game, no? You went out. Did you? You didn't go
we
3-2.
lost against Weibo. I think
Yeah.
our first game was Weibo, and then we played Mad Lions, TL, and then um,
Yeah. G2.
G2 for the match to get out of Swiss. So we definitely had a lucky draw then. So for sure, the draw helped us a lot in terms of making it out. Obviously, I think G2 at that time was a really tough opponent. I thought they were a very solid team, so I didn't think it was like undeserved that we made it out. But
It's been a bit
yeah,
of
we played well.
it's been a bit of revisionism in well, not revisionism, but it's kind of gone back and forth because there was a big rumor, at least I heard at the time, that like G2 was like a bit sick at the tournament and like maybe that was impacting their performance. But then I interviewed Mickey about a week ago. I don't know if you've seen it, and he was sort of saying like, hey, if I'm being honest, we were kind of shit in 2023, and like maybe it played a part, but like we were just straight up bad, and like they earned it or whatever. Talk to me about that series because it kind of like it was like a massive upset and like you kind of crushed the hopes and dreams of everyone in Europe.
Yeah.
People
I
talked
mean,
about G2 like they were a team that was going to go the distance, and like Chinese teams and Korean teams were like, oh, like G2's not going to win it, but that they're our dark horse.
yeah.
So talk to me about the
I
series.
guess I guess the feeling I had was I played against Broken Blade in the LCS before, so
Hmm.
during that series when I played against him, I felt like very similar tendencies of how he played on TSM and in the LCS. So to me, I thought compared to scrims, I thought he was playing far worse on stage, and he was making mistakes where it's like he's really following the team call. I think the clearest example to me was like he made a TP play bot on a play that was like already over on like Jax in game one, where it's like, holy shit, we're at Worlds and he's making he's kind of just following the team call no matter what. And I was like, this is I felt very like this is what he was doing on TSM when he was just like just following the team call, good or bad, and not necessarily thinking for himself. So to me, I was like, wait a minute, we can actually win because I just felt like they were just far weaker on stage. And after game one, you can kind of feel they were just very like uh thrown off their game. And I think in game two, like they were playing to camp me as Ornn versus Rumble in that lane. Like they spent a lot of attention towards top lane in that game. I was like, it really doesn't matter because I'm just playing Rumble and I can just clear waves and all that. So to me, I just thought their game plan was really they're just going back into like how they would play normally. Like on TSM, I was under Broken Blade at the time, so I had an idea of how he communicates, and he really does like spamming comms and just giving options to like towards top lane. At least he did in 2020. Obviously he for sure developed and changed as a player, and he's also very good now. But I felt similar tendencies in that series of like how he's probably communicating. It's like, yo, come top. I'm gonna hit six here, or like I have all this guys on flash, et cetera, et cetera. It's like I just felt like they just went back to like their natural habits and and then yeah, we were just able to win that series. So I thought they just didn't necessarily play how they would.
That's such an interesting insight because it's like you're sort of talking about how almost like the ability for you to have like heard his comms and be underneath him like was helping you like 5 years later, like in terms of like
Well, it wasn't helping me. It was just it was such a similarity. I saw it within how the game was going. I'm like,
well, it must
he's
have helped in
clearly
terms of like
calling.
reading the game somewhat, like to be like, oh, this is his mindset here, or
Yeah, in a way, I did feel that, but I wouldn't say it's like a huge advantage or anything.
of
It's
course.
just like it was just funny to see how like I'm on the other end of just what I saw so much in scrims from like the main team when I was in academy. It's like, yeah.
Were you like thinking about that at the time? Because it's one of those things where in retrospect it's like, oh, wow, like 5 years has come down to this, and it's like such a that's such like an inverse metaphor. Like it's very like movie like in a way. Like the understudy
Yeah,
like is on. Were
yeah,
you?
in a way, it was like a movie. It's like a little flashback while I'm playing the game. I'm like, God damn, he's really calling a lot for top when he's playing Ornn. Like, you don't necessarily want to, play around an Ornn that much. It's good to like if the target is no flash, you can pick up a free kill, but you don't want to spam that much attention on a tank. So I was pretty
And in
surprised
comparison
at
to
in the
scrims,
game
like
too.
what would you describe him like in scrims? Like was he just like very like what were the
I
differences?
thought in scrims he was a very strong laner. I thought he was up there with like the best laners at the tournament, honestly. Like his movement was really good in lane, his training was good. Um, yeah, I just thought he was a very strong laner at that tournament. So to be fair, I was expecting to, just do my best, hold my own, and then just play the team fights out. But I just didn't feel really much pressure out of him in the lanes. So, and I think the drafts weren't the best either. So I was pretty happy with obviously how the game went. Yeah.
And then obviously like presumably you're not having this into the series, but like once you win the game and you go back behind like into the waiting area and you're like talking to everyone, did you all have this kind of moment of like, hang on, like we can fucking beat these guys, like this is free, like we can go to quarterfinals?
Well, we didn't think it was free because you don't want to get overexcited off of one win, but we're like just we're happy. And in the back of our heads, I'm sure everyone's a little surprised of like, wow, we actually beat them since we're kind of getting smashed by them in scrims. But Sage is just different, and we just showed up better that day. I think notoriously we were pretty shit in scrims that year, and we would show up a lot better. Like everyone would be a lot more focused. Um, we'd have some scrim days where it's like Ignore is not really communicating too much. Everyone's a little tilted just based off random factors, but then on stage everyone just locks in. So it's like playing with the completely different set of players. So obviously that's not a good um, thing to have, where it's like you want practice to mirror what you're expecting on stage, but
If it works, it works.
it did happen, and we just made the most of it. Yeah.
What was your experience of like playing against some of the more like because this would have been one of your first times playing? I mean, presumably maybe at some point you played against them in solo queue, but like in the scrim environment, was this your first time playing against like Zeus and Bin and people like this?
Yeah, I mean that was my first international, so my first experience. I in my head, I didn't know what to expect going in, but I thought Zeus at the time was just insane. Zeus Keen, I thought those two were like just really really good at laning. I remember I played like one lane like Kennen versus like Tristana top, and I couldn't hit a single Q. I was pushing the whole game, and there was to me it felt like zero avenue where I could like play the game, and we just got completely stomped that game. After that game, I'm like, holy shit, like what just happened? I think we lost that game in like 15 minutes or something, and to me it felt like actually nothing I can do. Like he's never gonna die to a gank. I can't set up a stun. I can't land a Q. Um, yeah. So that was the first like welcome to internationals like moment. But I was happy to be there because that's kind of the competition that you want to have and play against, because you always want to improve, and the best way to improve is kind of just to get shit on and take what you can and learn from it. And if you get good enough, you can shit on someone else, and then once you feel that satisfaction of applying what you learn, I think that's the best part.
It sounds like you have a really good growth mindset in response to that, but like I wonder how much of at that time when you just get absolutely shit on like that, do you just come away from it like, well, what can I do? Like I don't have any time to get as good as he is. We're here now, the exam's tomorrow, and I didn't study, or maybe as much as I could. And it's like, how do you react to that? Because it's like, wow, this guy is so much better than me.
Well, I would say I didn't have a growth mindset earlier in my career. It's something, typically that you just, at least for me, I had to learn by myself. And yeah, 2023, I don't think I was like that far behind. Obviously, there was a gap, but I don't think it was like completely unplayable. It
Maybe
just,
I put that unfairly. I apologize.
yeah, it's just, they were for sure better at like the micro details, and it just opens your eyes to stuff that you weren't paying attention to previously. And it's hard to train yourself, especially on stage where you're likely to fall back to your, basic habits of just um, having, attention to detail on like the smallest of things, where it's like spacing, um, big thing, just level 2 power spikes. It's just pretty much all the small details they were, exceptional at. So it's just opened my eyes of like how far you can push a small lead. Um, and that's something I try to apply today. I look at a lot of odds, and then just try to apply that to my game as well. So yeah, having a growth mindset I think is a very big deal. Um, but yeah, I think just apply it, do the best you can, and it will work out.
I kind of just I want to carry on and talk about the series against Weibo that you played, but just as an on a not to derail us too much, but I get the general impression from you for everything you talk about in terms of that you're your own agent after a certain point. You've talked about having to like learn the growth mindset of your own. You talked about like not meeting many coaches potentially up till a certain point that like
Yeah,
helped you
yeah.
much. You strike me as someone that's had to kind of do it for himself consistently throughout his life and his career. And you seem to be doing quite well at that. But like, where does that come from? Like, where does that inner strength come from? Because not everyone could do that. Like, I'm a complete mother's boy, for example. Like, without my mum, I'd be lost. Like, so I quite respect the ability for you to kind of teach yourself all these things.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on the money with that, where I did have to learn just pretty much how to be mature and grow up within the scene by myself primarily. I didn't, and that's where I feel like coaches are pretty lacking in terms of how they help young kids or young adults, just have a professional mindset of like how you want to improve. And it was definitely difficult. I went through a lot of like ups and downs. Felt like I was an imposter at times. just in the scene. It's like, do I really deserve to be here at times? But you know, it's just a journey. Obviously, it's far easier now. I can reflect on it. It was like, I have a perspective, but at the time, it was pretty difficult. I guess what drove me is a lot of just being naive. I didn't know any better. Like league is all I really knew, so I wasn't really gonna. I didn't know what else to do, so I was just gonna keep continue doing it, even though it was difficult. So a lot in that sense.
It's very commendable, and thank you for kind of talking about that and opening up a little bit because it's so important. But I guess kind of to reiterate an angle of this that I'm interested in is just where does the inner strength come from? Because it's so interesting, and I know actually I read on your LCS profiles page. I think it's Ask Royal and Delphi that do that. Your favorite subject in school, I believe, was psychology. So to ask you something of a psychological nature, have you ever thought about like where your kind of your strength to persevere comes from? Because there are so many people that would just give up and they could not be faulted for that. Like I've given up at points in my life, and you seem to be someone that just continues to go despite not having help from anyone else. What do you attribute that to?
Um, bit of it. A lot of it is just motivation to improve. I think the biggest thing is passion just for playing League, and then I think that was my main drive. Where it's like I just really like League and I want to improve. I think that was the number one thing. And then second one is like I guess taking a personal vendetta against players who I felt were worse than me and still had better opportunities. So I wanted to just prove people wrong. I think it was most notable in like 2022, where I really felt like I can't believe I'm out of a job in amateur, and I feel like these people who are worse than me don't practice as hard as me, are getting more opportunities than me. So it was a bit of a personal vendetta driving me there, and I guess a mixture of that you can combine it and bundle it as perseverance, but you know, there's just an innate drive to improve as well, and that's just competition. And I just enjoyed competing. It was just fun, and it's pretty much all I knew. So, kind of being dumb and didn't know better was like also a big factor as well. So, a mixture of all of that.
It's very open of you to admit to just being dumb playing a factor. I respect that. I respect that a lot. You must have had this moment when you reached top eight at Worlds. Did you have this like kind of big moment of like, who do you think you are? I am, like in terms of all these people that were getting all these opportunities, not working as hard as you. You get the opportunity, you go in, and you make it to a top eight. What was that moment like?
I mean, it was a great moment. Definitely uh, the highlight, or the first I've been to at World. So I never thought of myself in that position where it's like I could be there. I remember when I was a kid, like when I was watching League just as a pro, it's like I'd tune in at 3, 4 in the morning, wake up to watch Worlds, to watch any teams play there, and then I find myself in that same position in Korea, and I'm sure there's people at the same age where it's like they might be waking up and watching me, so it felt like a real flashback moment, like holy shit, I'm actually here. And I just wanted to make the most of the opportunity because you don't really know if you'll ever have that shot again. So my mindset was like, all right, I'm here. I just got to make the most of it and
But you talked about
do
the
our
vendetta.
best.
I want to hear about the scorn, the revenge, You talked about this kind of this motivating internal drive that isn't potentially as nice as you come across. There's an internal drive to be proving that you're better than these fuckers who took opportunities from you. Were you thinking about that at all when you did it, or in the moments leading after it? Like
No, no, no. I
I
mean,
showed you guys, like I showed you.
um, at that point in time, no. At that point in time, it was very just. I just want to do our best to win. What can we do as a team to win?
Okay.
And maybe that that might have helped me a bit more to lock in. Maybe I should have just made some shit up, like I can't believe they're still down here or whatever. I don't know. But at that point, my frame of mind was completely different. I was just trying to do my best and lock in. So yeah, I didn't have a grudge at that point.
Interesting. I kind of wanted to ask you because we're talking about the topic of perseverance, and you're kind of putting it down to certain things and a passion for League. But then the question remains: you get kicked down so many times. Why now at the end of 2025 with no real good offers on the table for you? Not to say that you should. I'd love to see you keep going, but why don't you give up now?
Oh, I'm not gonna give up, but I'm just probably not gonna play at this point because at this point, I'm I finally my frontal lobe has finally developed where it's like, wait a minute, this is a bad decision to keep playing. Because in the past, like you have your youth and you can keep playing, but I think I'm at a point in my life where it's like I don't see a realistic chance for me to win and get to that same point of like playing internationally or playing to win. So I guess my frontal lobe is developed now, and I probably won't be playing unless I find an opportunity where I think it makes sense um, for me to keep playing.
Are
And
you giving
also just,
are you giving us a rare exclusive on this series of a potential retirement?
well, I wouldn't necessarily frame it as a retirement because I still have the passion to play. It's just you don't you have to be realistic with just what reality is giving you. It's like, I I can't see myself continuing to play if the rewards aren't matching the effort. And obviously, you can't expect the rewards to come without putting in the effort. But I just don't see a path where even if I play for a year or two, where it will be end up worth it at the end of it, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, I want
Yeah,
to kind of
yeah,
play devil's advocate with you and kind of push you here, but because everything that I've learned about you over the course of the last hour and 20 minutes or so is that there's a lot of fight in the dog and there's a lot of dog in the fight for you at multiple junctures.
yeah,
And against insurmountable odds, you scraped your way back from, Tartarus and hell back to kind of the landscape of the living to be amongst those who can be celebrated as champions. For you
yeah,
to have gone through all of that, surely those scars on your back are the entry tickets back to the work again. Sisyphus, only knows suffering because of how many times he's rolled the boulder up. Why are you talking about this? It sounds like you've come to the end of trying at some capacity. And you talked about your frontal lobe developing. Are you past the delusion of kind of childlike splendor and looking up towards that mountain? Are you more, your feet are more to the ground, it seems? Why are you giving up? It hurts me. It hurts me to hear you talk about it in this way.
Well, I don't see it's giving up in a sense because I mean, I guess when you've been playing for like 7, 8 years and you've had some success, but you're real like in my position, I feel like I'm at a starting point again where it's like to get back to that same position of success would require a lot of factors, um, I would say outside my control going well. It's just really unlikely that you're rewarded and you want to reach your same goals. Like I think it's just to me right now it's inconceivable that I would see myself at the end of this year if I were to play, be at Worlds again or be at any internationals, um, given the opportunities that I have in front of me. So I just don't see the value of playing where it's like I feel like I've proven to myself finally, like I know I can compete with the best players, and I guess I proved that to myself now, or it's like I can play there. So I don't see the value of competing if I don't have a chance to win, if that makes
I
sense.
get that, but then it's like this duplicitous thing where it's like, well, you gave him the taste for it. Surely he's got a taste for it. But the way you're talking about it is almost like I'm done being undervalued. I'm done, kind of like not being given a seat at the table. Like, which is it?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a factor into it. It's like pride for sure, I think is the driving
You're
factor in
done. You're
terms of
done begging. You're done crawling.
well, I wouldn't say I was I guess you could say that, yeah. Like I'm
Metaphorically,
not gonna
yeah.
yeah, I'm not gonna um just go through this whole grind again and be in a position where I guess like if you sign with the team right now, it's very unlikely that you get transferred to a different team middle of the year. Realistically, like I think it was happening this split or last split within TL. Like they wanted Castle from DSG middle of the year, and that wasn't able to come to fruition, and that's an example from like a player from a bottom team, you know, potentially being able to join a stronger team, and even that wasn't able to happen. So it's like the chances, opportunities to go from a perceived bottom team to a perceived stronger team and having a chance to win is very, very low. Um, and you know that makes the run that we had on Heart of Thieves even more unrealistic. Like, you know, we were eighth and we made it to Worlds. Like, and it doesn't really happen often, and you just can't count on. I don't want to hedge my bets on a run like that to be successful at the end of like end of playing one more year.
It's
You
quite an
know.
insane thing to even speak into reality, but I kind of infer this from what you're saying, and you tell me whether you think it's fair. Is it fair to say that you would have a better chance of not being on any team and then kind of through like mishap or accident or tragedy finding a way on a team? It would be better for you to do that than to start on a team that's bad.
Well, no, because bad teams are typically the ones that make changes, not necessarily good teams.
No, but I
So,
mean, is it better for you to just sit out and not play than to go and play somewhere that's bad? In terms of if you're looking for a big opportunity.
well, I would say in my position it is because at this point I don't even know if I'm still like questioning myself. Like, do I still want to play? Like, I know I have the drive to play. I do want to play, but it's just not financially responsible or like time-wise responsible because overall, I feel like the scene is dying, at least in terms of regionally in the LCS, and it doesn't really make sense to keep continuing for me down this path of how many more years do I realistically keep playing, and um, at the end of it, you know, what do I have to show like for the next like portions of my life? You know what I mean? It's like
That's fair.
eventually this just turned in from a passion project. Like eventually, I do have to find a real job and you know, live out the remainder of my life. I can't just keep chasing my passions, which, you know, I was so blessed to be able to do for so long. It's like eventually reality has to set in and, you know, like you have to all good things must come to an end.
I'm very reminded. I don't know why I want to do this, but I'm very reminded. There's a poem I really like by Langston Hughes. I hope you don't mind if I read it to you. It very
No,
much
read it,
it
read it.
very much reminds me of what you're talking about. It's called Dream Deferred by Langston Hughes. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrup sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? That's a dream deferred. It's quite like it reminds me of what you're saying in the sense of you're potentially at a crux of deferring your dream. Deferring referring to, you know, when you take a year out or you delay it. You're working out what that dream is. You're working out whether that light that you've always clambered towards, no matter the odds, you've clambered towards it because it was the only way out, and now you're trying to figure out whether just to kind of what life looks for you. But it's confusing to me because it seems to be that you're approaching a decision that is antithetical or in direct contrast to everything that has taught you survival over the last 10 years. Would that be fair to say?
I wouldn't say I'm deferring the dream because I felt like I've lived it. So in
So
that
that's
sense,
okay, interesting. So you feel like you've lived it and therefore you're satisfied potentially with the idea of having to move on.
well, I'm not satisfied that this is the way it ends. It's
Okay.
just, it's just reality, right? It's like it doesn't matter what I think of how it should go. It's you just have to accept reality, and then the more you're against what reality is telling you is where suffering, you know, comes from. And you just have to be real with it. It's like, are you gonna? It, so two questions or two answers to that. Like, I don't think I'm deferring my dream since I lived it, right? I like when I first started to play pro, I wanted to just play in front of a stadium, which I did. And luckily, I was able to win a trophy where it was unexpected. Go to Worlds twice. I would say relatively successful for um, a player like me. And so for me, it's like I lived my dream. And and then the reality part of it is like there's just not that much money in the scene. And if you keep going down this route, um, you're gonna be, well, let's say like 30, and you don't really have any transferable skills or what have you to like go into the next phase of your life. Um, so eventually, you have to value like the risk versus reward of like, should I keep playing, and what does my future look like if I do keep playing, versus when do I stop?
We've got like a really interesting kind of back and forth dichotomy here between like kind of like delusional idealist poeticism that I'm trying to wax lyrical about and the kind of the cold hard truth of a financial situation. For you, I don't know if you're comfortable sharing, but it would be an interesting example. As someone that like has probably like no one would assume you've ever received the super contract. How does your life look like financially? Like, have you taken care of yourself? Do you have like investments? Do you have like a farm that
Yeah.
you've kind of like developed for yourself for your retirement when you go off into the sun? Or
I mean, I do have, a comfortable amount of money where it's like I don't necessarily need to worry about money, but um, so I'm very blessed in that sense. I'm very blessed. I've never had to work a real job. Like esports, playing pro is all I've really known in terms of employment. So, I would still say I've never worked a real job or never had a job. Um, if you want to count playing video games as a job, then yes. But um, so I'm very blessed in the position I'm in because, some people have, college debt or student loan debt. Um, so I'm in a position where, I'm very lucky where I don't have any of that. Um, but I just have to go on to the next phase of my life. It's like there's just no money in the scene. I'm not going to get like a super contract where it makes financially, sense to keep playing and keep going down this route. And at this point, once you've tasted victory and success, like you don't necessarily want to repeat that process, and you don't know when that next um, chance might happen.
you're not dying of thirst in the same way that you were before. It doesn't necessarily mean the hunger isn't there, but you know what that water
Yeah,
tastes like, and you're not dying of thirst. You're not drowning anymore.
yeah, yeah,
It's interesting though because this is a kind of at odds, and it then presents the major question to me of I promise we will get onto the Weibo series at some point, but it presents the question of why did you then choose to do so much content and do all of these like vlogs and kind of present yourself as like this social media star in this most
yeah.
recent time?
That's a great question. So I guess I was in a similar position at the start of 2025, right? It was like last offseason, I wasn't able to find a team, and I was kind of in the same internal dialogue with myself as I am, just right now. It's like, is it worth playing? You know, how is it, like what would the path to success be at that point? And naively, I thought at the time, I would keep playing, um, and just try to get onto a team. And then eventually reality set in and it was like, all right, you know what, maybe it's not a good idea. And then I think middle of the year, probably in like June or maybe earlier than that, I was like, I'm just done with League because realistically, I'm not going to go pro again. And streaming doesn't necessarily, I didn't see growth in that, and that's not something I was like super passionate about at the time. I just felt like that was the only option you had. And then an opportunity came up to coach, and then I still didn't know what I was doing at the time. So I'm like, well, I can get paid and use my experience to help a player, and still figure out what I want to do in the future. So to me, that was like a little gap or like something to do in the meanwhile while I'm still figuring out what I want to do next. So I was like, okay, this is a good opportunity where it is something I'm passionate about, where it's like, yeah, I could see myself, helping player, struggle with things I went through, where it's like I didn't have a mentor in my position of someone who can teach me just like mentally of how to cope with like losing and just reframe um, just your mindset, just really just the mindset of what it takes to just persevere in that sense
I'm
is
gonna
something I
ask
thought.
I'm gonna ask you something
Yeah.
that's difficult and is actually quite unfair as a question, but I think
Hmm.
is will provide interesting answer. You're someone that experienced in your career being a younger player who didn't have a mentor potentially and wasn't getting taught things, and you got replaced by an older veteran in Haunter. You came in to help a younger player in General Sniper, and then you being the veteran were the one that replaced him on the starting lineup. Obviously, that removes and extrapolates any context from the situation. But could it not be said that it's kind of like you almost experienced the kind of the full Ouroboros there? You kind of lived out your own incurable sin that had happened to you. What's the real?
I think that's
What's the real? So take that question and give me the real story.
yeah, I think the situations definitely need some context because as for the TSM situation, they wanted a backup in case Huni failed, and they wanted someone who was, I guess, proven. It was like, okay, this could be a good backup option if the Huni situation didn't work out. Because I think during that time, Huni was probably considered like a high risk player. It's like, there's still the upside on him, but there's a downside on him. So they wanted something to have as a backup option. So I was replaced there. And that wasn't like a mentor situation where it's like he's coming to like coach me. That was just like LCS and academy. So it's like they weren't really even interacting. And then the situation between 100 and me and Sniper was like, I was signed on as a coach. When I was signed on, I didn't even have a player contract. So in my head, I had no intention of playing because um, yeah, at that point, before I even signed the team, like I was done with League. Like I haven't played solo queue in like 2 weeks. Um, I was like studying Khan Academy, like doing a intro to like econ, like macroeconomics, microeconomics, and all that. So it's like
You
I
more of
was
a
really done
you
with
more of a
League.
Keynesian guy, or what kind of?
I honestly I forgot. I know what
Oh,
you're
it's
talking
good.
about,
Good
but
job you came back to league then, mate. 'Cause you clearly didn't fucking learn anything. Anyway,
League fried my brain already, so I forgot all of that.
but
So
you came to the team. You had a coach contract. You started playing. You started working with General Sniper. What happened from there?
yeah, so I mean, initially, I got signed on as a coach, and that was my intention to play or to just coach and not play. So to me, I felt like I was a perfect person to, teach Sniper, pretty much teach him everything that I've went through, and I saw a lot of myself in him in terms of, being really young, didn't know how to, you know, mentally frame like how to deal with losing and how to have a growth mindset. So I thought, that's someone I could really help with. And yeah, I guess the situation around that was, I think he, it's very hard for me to speak about this without making him seem like the bad guy, but I think he's just very young and just immature in the sense of he's just a kid, and it's really hard for me to impart my wisdom on someone who doesn't necessarily take
Well,
into account what I'm saying.
let's take it from this position because I think a way that is helpful here because it's a volatile discussion and one of the goals here is always to like not like as I said to you in the lead up to this we had a little 10-minute talk. I don't want it to feel
Yeah,
like it's a thing where like you're going to get clipped out of context. So I guess the more emotionally resonant way to talk about this is you said you saw yourself in him. Talk to me about some of the mirrored things that you went through at the beginning of your career, because presumably you were like him at one point as well. What was Dhokla when he was 18 like as a player, and
yeah,
what did that prevent him from doing, and how was that similar for Sniper? Because then it means people can look at it like we're not flaming. You're not flaming Sniper. It's more just
yeah, yeah,
you can kind of you. It's almost like talking to your past self in some ways. Talk to me about you at 18.
yeah. So I guess the way I would describe myself is someone who grinded a lot, um, and really my whole life was centered around League, and this is for me specifically. Um, and I thought, just hard work was like the number one factor in terms of improving, and um, so that's why, to me in my head, that's why I just spammed so many games in solo queue and just worked a lot because I thought that was like the easiest way for me to improve. And mentally, when I would lose, it would just be a very perfectionist mindset where it's like I need to do better. Um, I can't believe I made a mistake like this. A lot of comparison to others is like this guy in the same position, like he's not making a mistake like this. And just that whole mindset of negativity can spiral really out of control really fast if you don't know what you're doing. And it's nice to have someone reassure you where it's like where you're going through is normal, and because you don't know any better, this is just your default state of how you're going to think about the problem. And that could be just how you're grown up and how you deal with, issues that come up in your life. Like you don't know other ways to handle them. So you just go to what you know. And for me, that was just like the negativity just spirals and spirals. And then, you just get sad. And then eventually you have some good days and then your confidence is back. But it's like a wave of just ups and downs.
And what were you seeing in Sniper when you kind of came to work with him? Because it's like I imagine a lot of that is difficult when you meet someone that's a bit younger than you. Like I've had this before. I meet someone that's like maybe 5 years or so, and I'm like, oh wow, you're going through exactly the same thing I am. But it's like they're not necessarily primed to be like, oh wow, I completely believe that because they can't see the relationship forwards, right? You can see it backwards, they can't see it forwards.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they
yeah.
can't just be like, oh, I'll take your word for it. You probably were exactly like me. I'll listen to you. So talk to me about the difficulty in relaying that and what were you seeing in him that was similar to you?
Um, well, honestly, I'm just gonna keep it honest here. So it's like I didn't see someone like when you think of an 18-year-old or like someone young, you expect them to be, league is their focus of their life and just grind all day and just play all the time and just be super invested and not really have any outside hobbies or anything like that. And I wasn't seeing that out of Sniper at the time. And to me, that was a big frustration because I feel like he's wasting a big opportunity that he has that he might not know it's like how rare of an opportunity that he does have and he's um just letting go away. So, I did speak with him like, do you feel like you're doing everything you can to, make most of this opportunity? And then naively, I feel from my point of view, he answered yes. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, This just can't be true because when I was his age, like just way more solo queue. He has way more like structure and access to like coaches. Just a lot better conditions than what I had. So I was, it's hard to tell someone like you don't know how good you have it when they don't know any better. Um,
Was that
so
did that anger you in some way?
yeah, it definitely did because I saw myself in like, wow, if I had the same opportunity at that age, then with my mindset at the time, I could have been in a different position potentially. You obviously don't know, but you let your imagination run a bit. So I just felt like someone I really wanted to connect with and try to help, but he's not helping himself, and you can only do so much to I'm not his like parent or anything. I can't like force him to change his ways. All I can do is really guide him the best I can, and ultimately it's up to him.
Here's a devil's advocate question for you. You mentioned here talking about how you wouldn't do what you did again, and kind of the way that you went about it is like, what do you have to show for it? And you wouldn't recommend anyone to take the path that you did in regards to going towards a pro player. Does it then not represent kind of a hypocrisy of the soul, so to speak, to see this mirror in front of you, this potential version of yourself from the past, and kind of encourage them to go on the same path as you, and almost not deride them, but criticize them for not following the same path? How does that interact with your direct morality that's internal to you, philosophy or whatever? um, in opposition to what you believe is a good opportunity. Because it feels like to me there's two cores that fight here. There's the fact that you kind of you have resentment towards the lack of opportunity you had, but then there's also a part of you that's like, well, you must understand it because you have this external thing of I wouldn't want anyone
Well,
to
I would say it's a
do it how I
bit
did.
different because I wouldn't say it's a direct like reflection of myself because I thought the qualities that what we had is just different. Where in the
Interesting.
sense of
Okay, you're saying the work ethic isn't similar, so therefore there wasn't a direct
yeah,
comparison.
yeah, exactly. I think that was the biggest that has been my biggest attribute where it's like I just play a lot and I just work a lot. Um and I just spend a lot of my time just watching VODs and trying to improve. So um it's not a direct reflection of myself, but it's a reflection of myself in terms of mindset where it's like I can help um, you know, just mentally in the sense of like how to frame losing into a positive way, just teach them about like small things, and just really microanalyze his gameplay, just be like a teacher to him and just just help him improve at a really, really rapid rate. And yeah, obviously I don't think he took the best advantage of the opportunity that he had. And yeah, so I am disappointed in the sense of I felt like he was not aware of like how lucky it is to be in the position that he is in.
That's interesting, but I suppose this sparks a conversation and a debate about, like, I guess what I'm talking about and what I was trying to get across in the question I just asked you, although some of these are unfair and like they're going to come at you personally, but it's like I'm giving you the opportunity to present the foil to it, to, speak your case or whatever. It's a thing where you're now 28 years old, you're looking at the end of your career, in some ways burnt out and jaded, apathetic to kind of the thralls of the industry, so to speak. You hate agents, you don't necessarily like being overlooked and stuff like this. Um, and you've put so much work in. Is there not? There's going to be some people that watch the way you're talking about it. It's like, how much can you criticize General Sniper potentially for the crime of having a life outside of League and not like fully giving his all to this, because giving his all could be so crushing, and you've experienced that personal sense of crushing. Are you not setting someone else up for the conveyor belt in some ways? Do you not feel like that in some capacity?
I could see how you could get to that point, but I think the circumstances around that are different, where I feel like he was, or he was in a position where he's able to, do far better than anything I would be able to do because of just the opportunities presented. Where it's like he would have someone to help him just individually in terms of just leveling up his gameplay and mentally and just um it's very easy for him to have a career in this league if he just took advantage of the opportunities. And I just think like if you don't do everything you can to improve yourself in that regard, then I think yeah, then it's a sin to keep going down this path because you're not. Then what is your like real motivation? Are
Okay,
you
so I've arrived at what I think your philosophy is. Your philosophy is it's not necessarily fair that you have to give your whole life to this, but if you're going to do it, you have to. The minute you are committed to it, give it your all. Before we arrive at that point of committal, we can talk about whether it's like worth it or like morally, ethically giving your entire life to it, not sleeping is whatever. But once we arrive to it, you're locked in. Would that be fair to say that that's kind of what your mindset is? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
or I mean, I would say like yes, you should, give it your all, but in the sense of you need to make this a priority, like, and it has to be the most important thing to you for sure. Because I mean, for his scenario specifically, right? Like, I don't want to speak for him, but he's dropped out of high school for this. So for me, there's from my point of view, for me, like this should be the most important thing to him because there isn't necessarily a great fallback for him. So if he's not fully invested into it, then I, it just questions like what is his intrinsic motivation of like why is he doing this? Does that make sense?
Sure. I guess my question is more in terms of your approach to what the value proposition and what the kind of internal conceited contract that is made for being a pro player, where it is just sort of this thing of like, we're going to take all the hours in your day for you to chase this thing. How do you kind of, because it's not even just a league thing, like where does your mindset towards that come from? Because almost like the value proposition that is placed upon a player is basically give us your entire life and you have to give all these hours, just in the like potential delusion that you could keep up with some of the Asian players. And you've seen
Well,
that's been like the complete like that's the kind of dichotomy in the LCS over the last few years, where some people talk about like people lays off, people do this, some people are really dedicated to it. You seem to be one of the rare people in America in the LCS that kind of has this like I'm willing to put my all in all the time. How do you
well, it
justify that?
doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily. It shouldn't feel like a sacrifice.
Okay, that's what I'm
In my
interested in.
head, like I don't understand why people consider it a sacrifice to play League all day, where it's like you're chasing your passion. And for me, I was very passionate, so I never felt like there was never. something else I would want to do. So it never felt like a sacrifice. So
So for
in
you,
my head, I'm like,
chasing your passion is just something where this is my passion, so therefore I give my absolute all to it, and there's no even question about it. You never even question that. It's just intrinsic to who you are as a person.
yeah, it's like, I mean, if I had free time, like this is what I would want to do anyway. So it's like, I saw essentially no sacrifice of what I would want to do. And so for me, I can't necessarily relate where people say like, oh, I sacrificed so much earlier in their careers. I think at this point, for me, where I stand now, maybe a little bit different, but earlier in your career, I feel like the real sacrifice is you sacrificed your um everything leading up to that point where it's like for Sniper specifically, like he sacrificed his education to be in this opportunity, and that is a real sacrifice where it's like um you went down the different path, the non-traditional path, which is inherently wrong, but if you're not gonna fully be committed to it, then that is a sacrifice where it's like, is it really worth it at that point?
And how much of that do you kind of owe? You owe your mindset to this of like a thing of like, well, I wasted a load of my parents' money on tuition to be here, so you better bet your bottom dollar I'm going to be working every day.
Yeah, I mean that is something that drives you for sure. For me, uh, yeah, I mean that is one thing I regret a lot. Um, but I mean, luckily it worked out. But that is the driving factor. It's like you don't want to waste the opportunity, especially when your parents work so hard to, at least for me, to have a position where I am able to do this. So yeah, that's for sure a driving factor.
Cool. I said we'd do it eventually, and I think this topic is getting semi-emotional. So let's take the foot off the gas. Let's talk about the Weibo series because we skipped over that. We did say we'd talk about it eventually. You go into the Weibo series. You've managed to make the miracle of making it out of Swiss. Weibo actually didn't look like. I don't think anyone would have assumed they were going to finals from that top eight.
Yeah.
You must have felt like you had a you must have felt like you got one of the better teams you could have
Yeah,
drawn.
we felt like we high rolled actually every single point of the draw. At least in my head, I'm like, okay, we were bound to get a strong like Asian team no matter what, eventually in the Swiss. And then we got EU, NA, EU, so it's like pretty much the most amount of luck you can have. And then we got the perceived weakest team in the knockout bracket. So to
And
me,
you
I
and
thought
you
like,
and you'd
okay,
played
this is probably our best chance
and you'd
anyways.
played them.
So
You played them in the Swiss as well. Wasn't the one lost two way? But
yeah,
how did you feel when you played against them? Was it like a thing where you played? Because you mentioned earlier when you played against C9, it was like, oh, we lost, but it was like it was playable. Was it playable against
yeah.
Weibo the first time?
Well, to be fair, I was playing Ornn in that series, and I didn't feel like I had really any agency in that game. So I think I did send out a tweet like, the shy, like, I've learned from my mistakes. I will not be playing Ornn again. I was like my tweet on it. Because to me, it felt like I had zero agency in that game. Anything I would have done, probably wouldn't have changed the outcome of the game. So for me, it was just like a fresh series where like I knew for sure I was not going to be playing Ornn because I don't want to just not have any agency. And going into that series, I thought it was for sure the weakest team out of the bracket stage, just based on like perceived strength. So I was pretty happy with it, and um, the series was a 3-0, but I think games 1 and 2 were competitive, and it just came down to a couple of team fights in game 1 where it's like I my tendency of overstaying in side lane kind of bit us a bit, where it's like probably should have grouped to look for a flank and play for the team fight a bit. And then I mean obviously there was other factors in that series too, but things that I could control were uh just like the small details of like I should probably like team fight a little bit better. And that was a regret. And I think game 3 was just complete stomp. I think at that point we were down 2-0 and we were like, all right guys, we gotta do something different. Let's just do whatever the fuck and then try to get a win. But yeah, that one fell apart. But games 1 and 2 were at least a little competitive, and just the smallest of details kind of shot us there.
What was it like playing against the Shy? in that series?
Um, it was great because this is exactly what I wanted to do. I mean, I feel like as a pro, you should always want to prove yourself against the best, and that's where you gain the most as a person and just like professionally. It's like you want to beat the best. And to me, I was very happy to be in that position because the Shy, obviously everyone knows him. He's like he was just super dominant in 2018 of just like being by far the best. So I was very excited to have the opportunity to play against him and see how I fare. So for me, I'm personally always very excited to play against great players.
He felt like he was like in that tournament. He was kind of like wrapped in a narrative that had like a narrative blanket that had been like weaved by God almost. Like it was like Cadril just decided that he was gonna go to finals, and he just did. Like he beat you guys, and then he had the series where he went like popped off against Bin. Did you feel like a very like strong individual level when you played against him? Because you spoke about scrimming against Zeus and being like, "Wow, this guy is fucking good." Did you feel a similar energy from the Shy, or was it not
Um,
that impressive?
he was good. I think the thing that stood out most was like when he shoves you in under tower, he's able to just get like really good trades under your tower and take very little damage on the way out. So for example, it's like he would like he'd do like a full combo on like top lane champ. I don't know, like anything. I mean, that's traded for either one tower shot or he's just juking the tower shot timing, where it's like you're just getting chunked under your tower going for farm. And then when he does trade, it's like a full combo of skills for one tower shot HP, where it's clearly um worth worth for one tower shot. So I thought he harassed like you under your tower better than any player I played against. So in that sense, I thought he was really good of just putting his foot on the gas and just keeping you down. Um, yeah. So try not to get under your tower so you don't get spanked for every CS, I guess.
That's so interesting to hear you talk about kind of an individual aspect of a player. Are there any other kind of these elite top laners that you'd be able to like? What's their like thing that you think they're obviously good in all facets of the game,
Yeah.
but what would
I
you say
think
like for
yeah,
Bin, for Zeus, for Keen, some of these like elite level top
for
laners, Doran?
Zeus, he uses level 2 timings really well. Like he positions himself for like a level 2 timing better than most players. And may catch you off guard and may like deny you some CS for that. And if you're not willing to accept some CS down, you're gonna lose a lot of HP for it. So just like small details from all these players I've picked up on and kind of made like a profile on how they play. So it's really nice to see like those traits within players and try to apply them to my game as well.
What about Bin? Is there anything you notice that he excels at individually in particular?
Um, we didn't necessarily scrim BLG that much, at least this year. I think the first time we played him was on stage, so I didn't really have too much experience against him. But
And he played very, very strangely against you this Worlds.
I mean, I was getting kind of really shit on in lane. I mean, everyone's gonna remember the dive that he did and where he died in a pretty silly way, but I was getting kind of bitched on in that lane quite a bit because that was the first time I played that lane. Or maybe like very few times I played that lane of like Rek'Sai. I thought it was like a fringe pick where it's like it was just a whatever champ. But I thought it was actually by the end of the tournament, I thought it was a pretty good counter into Sion, and I just didn't know it yet. So um, I thought he played lane well, but once he was behind, like he was just running it down. So can't really take too much out of that. But
Fair enough. And did you get a chance to play
yeah,
against like I mean you mentioned Keen before. Did you get a chance to play against Keen, Doran?
w-
Could you share
we
us like
played against we played against Shenji one block. Um, I thought he was solid. I actually didn't think he was like super insane. I felt like I was holding my own. Like he was just trading like very well. Like I think we played Renekton and Bessa. And he was just trading on, very logical timings and a very logical trade pattern. So it wasn't anything like super surprising, but it's just the consistency of like how methodical he is when it comes to trading. It's like, this guy's a robot in terms of like, okay, if you do this, I have a counter. If you do this, I have a counter. And um yeah, so to me in that sense, like, wow, he really understood, all the answers for everything that's gonna get thrown at him.
And then Doran, you obviously played an official against him, but did you scrim any blocks against Doran?
No, we didn't get to play against T1 up until our match. So Doran, I thought he was like whatever. I didn't think he was like super insane. He did like you could say he laned well, but I also laned poorly in the first game of Renekton and Bessa. But I guess he was the one thing I noticed is he's really good at, or I don't know if it was necessarily really good, but like he just bluffed his way through like some of the waves where it's like that wasn't his wave to touch, and maybe it's just a T1 aura of like, oh, my jungler is gonna be here, or like, oh, we're gonna make a play, or carry is roaming or whatever, but like he's just bluffing waves where it's not supposed to happen. And in game, I'm very frustrated. Like, dude, how is he? Vividly remember watching the game back. It was like right before third dragon, he picked up red buff,
Did you watch this after the
and
series or between the games?
well, I made a mental note of it in the game, but then I would watch it after. And then to me, it's just like, how is he contesting this wave here when I'm stronger than him? He has no vision on my side, but I also don't have conversely vision on his side as well, and so
So because the
it's just a bit
T1 the
annoying.
T1 the T1 game was a best of one, wasn't it, or was it a best of three?
Best of three.
Oh, so
But
if it's a
it
best
was
of three.
just game
You
one.
didn't answer my question. When you were reviewing these bluffing waves, were you doing it in between game 1 and 2, or did you wait until after the series?
Oh, after the series, this
Oh,
is
okay,
like
cool. Because
way after.
it's an interesting thing because it's like this thing of like he's doing all these bluffs. You almost are at like a poker table where you're getting like tilted as it's happening. 'Cause it's like, oh my god, I can't believe he's tricked me again. Were you kind of feeling like that at some point when you were playing against Doran?
A little bit, but I wouldn't say a tricked. It's like you don't want to look like a dumbass and try to contest waves just based off ego. It's like, it can go bad half the time. So it's like,
I'm more so what
on
I'm saying.
stage.
More so what I'm saying is this kind of like the bluffing game of like I can't believe like he's gotten away with it again. Like how much does that play into like the next time? Because it's like if you're at a poker table and it's like you get bluffed three
Yeah.
times, maybe you call them on the fourth and then it wasn't a bluff that time.
Yeah,
How
but I
much
mean,
did it fuck with you? That's what I'm
I
asking.
mean, it's not necessarily. I mean, like bluff comes from like, okay, is mid out of vision? Like
Yeah,
for
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 sure.
example, that time like Faker took a base and he could like in theory he could have ran top with Tilio, and then that's why I'm respecting the wave. It's not like
Mm.
I'm just conceding the wave for no reason. It's
Yeah,
like
no, of
there's a
course.
reason behind it. But yeah, it's like it definitely is like a ego thing. Like, wow, I can't believe you just did that to me. Um, and then maybe you make an emotional decision and you try to not, you know, make an emotional decision. You just want to be logical about like, is this guy actually supposed to be here or not? Um, and I just remember that moment crucially because I was about to hit 2 items, um, and I was in a winning position in the lane. So it was important that like I get like 2 to 3 more waves, and then I would have had 2 items with TP for the third dragon. So that was like a pivotal moment in the game for me, and that was like one thing if I could change, then I would try to do that specific thing differently.
It's interesting. It's a really good insight on a lot of the elite top laners in the world from your perspective. Let's go back to 100 Thieves because you come in as a coach and we kind of talked about what some of the issues were, but give us the kind of the truth of how the decision was arrived to, kind of from your perspective, the timeline. Because obviously it's the thing when it all comes out, it's like a thing of like you get it's not a criticism of the org, it's just how every org does it, and like you get the PR thing of like, oh, this is what's happening. We're not going to talk about it too much. But now that the season's over, I was hoping to get it from your perspective. You obviously talked about you arrived as a coach. You're trying to reach Sniper. Potentially, you're failing to do so. What does it look like in terms of when the decision has arrived? What are the first conversations about maybe Dhokla can play? How did it happen from your eyes?
Yeah. So from my eyes, I think we were having just scrims, and then we had a day off after, and then we weren't necessarily making too much progress within like stuff that Sniper could work on. So it wasn't even my idea, but it was our coach's idea of like, hey, they just asked me, like I was on the gym, and then he just asked me like, hey, do you want to sub in for tomorrow's scrims just to have Sniper see what it looks like to you know communicate well, or et cetera, just to see what it looks like from the outside of what he needs to do. So then I was like, Sure. I think that would be a good way because to just like give him more examples of like what he needs to do. So played one day of scrims on that block, and then after that he was playing, and then didn't necessarily see too much changing in terms of him. So um eventually, like we were in 8th place at the time, so obviously everyone's fairly pretty upset with the way that things are going, and maybe unfairly, placing the blame majority on Sniper. Um, and everyone, I would say, is trying to take accountability, but it, not to sugarcoat it, but like he was for sure just not performing to the standard that you would need him to perform at if you want to, just be successful.
I kind of wanted to give it a more
So
cerebral overview and like kind of be fair because I think one of the things is when you make things tangible, you avoid speculation. So, firstly, to kind of give him a fair rep, Sniper obviously earned his way into the LCS. It's fair to say, and there were certain
yeah,
things and skills that he brought to the table. In maybe not in that particular split, but there were times where he was looked at as being good and having a lot of potential. What would you say from working with Sniper are like his biggest upsides? Like, what does he bring to a game that's unique to him? Well, not unique to him, but like, what is he good at?
he's definitely good at laning on his champs. Like he's had Xante, Riven, obviously known for his Riven. Renekton, he's good at. He's just good at his handful of champs, and this was pre-fearless meta when I thought he was quite a strong laner. Um, and he shit on me in 2024. Like I remember he was playing like Olaf versus Renekton. I got completely ran in that game. So like I thought he was very solid in terms of mechanics, and um, so when I came in, I didn't really grasp like what the situation was of behind the scenes of how it was going. So to me, it was a bit surprised. Like it was this like dysfunction within the team of like what I perceived it as like wow, I thought this guy was a really strong player to like behind the scenes of like you know seeing how it all works and is coming together.
Cool.
So
So
yeah,
sorry, did you have something to say there?
no, and then just going off our first question, it's like um so yeah, I mean the team was not very happy with like obviously everything going on, and a lot of blame was being placed on Sniper, maybe unjustly so. For and then the idea did get floated around after a while. It's like what if Dhokla just plays? And then our GM was pretty much against that decision because he's like that'd be just completely fucked, and we didn't even bring you on as a player, and that's not coming from like I didn't even ask to be a player. It's just like that was just what the team vibe was, and then eventually the idea did come into my head of like if I was a player, would things be different? And the situation did come around where it's like, um, I could play, but at the same time, where I was offered a spot on 100, I was also offered a spot on Lion, to play for them. So, because they were also going through some visa turmoil with Zamudo, and at that point, I had two options to play, and yeah, I took the 100 Thieves offer because I thought they had a stronger team, but Lion was paying me double what 100 was going to pay me, so I still wanted to go to 100 because I just liked the vibes there more. Knew everyone there, um, and money wasn't really the motivating factor because I wanted just a chance to win. So I thought I'd have the best chance at 100.
That's completely fair. Just kind of from the perspective of just kind of get an insight into you as a person. When you get this opportunity to potentially play, how do you reason with that? Because it's the thing where, like, in your mind, you must be thinking, I don't want to ever be the one that's pushing for this. It's obviously good for me. It's like just in complete human nature to be like, it is a good opportunity for me to play, with all these other factors in place. Like, how do you like kind of remove yourself emotionally from the situation and just like kind of let it play out? Or like, how did you kind of reason with yourself emotionally at that time?
Well, I mean, to be fair, it's hard to not be emotionally invested because from a personal standpoint, it's like I see someone kind of wasting the opportunity that they're given and not making the most of it. So for me, it's like I just see myself like if I was in the same position as him, like things would be different. So a personal standpoint is like that. It's like, and at the end of the day, it's also competition, which you know, eh, you're playing to win, and unfortunately, like
Do you
that
think
is just competition.
the nature of how your career's gone and kind of how cutthroat it's been for you at times kind of like makes you view it as pure competition in some capacity? Not to suggest you're being unempathetic in any capacity, but it's almost like you haven't been treated the nicest, so it's like you kind of do just view it raw emotionally.
A little bit, I would say that factored into it as well, but yeah, I mean, for sure that factors into it as well. But at the end of the day, like it is competition.
Yeah,
And this is a sport, and that happens. It happens in traditional sports all the time. It's like your spot's not guaranteed to you, and obviously the way when it happened, it's like pretty you know atypical situation, but your spot is never guaranteed to you. And I think people do need to realize that. Like even like Kumayushi, like he got benched. Like what makes you think like you're untouchable? Like
fair. But then going
yeah.
on to one of the interesting things I want to hear is at what point, just remind me, what point in the season did you know that 100 Thieves was no longer going to be a thing?
I mean, like a week or I think I knew like during the interview it was like, yeah, 100 is probably leaving the league. So I knew coming into it like it was just a one split project, and I to me that was what I was also looking for. I couldn't really see myself continuing like in this
So
direction unless like
it wasn't this thing where you're on this miracle run and then suddenly you hear, oh, we're leaving. So it's like kind of a
yeah.
weird boost or whatever. You kind of knew going into it.
Oh, I mean, absolutely, I knew going in. I mean, there was rumors from like last year where they were trying to sell too,
Yeah.
right? It's like it's not unexpected that they were going to leave the league at the end of the year. So to me, I was only looking to be here for one split anyways because, as I said before, like it was just something to do. Meanwhile, while I figure out what I wanted to do moving forward, so yeah, it was just one split opportunity.
It's interesting because then in that case, what is it like doing this miracle run, this last high, so to speak, which is what it was, marketed as, obviously 100 Thieves. What is it like? Kind of you're sailing this like doomed ship, so to speak. Do you not really factor into that or care about that? It's like you're playing for an org, you're going on this miracle run, but like it's this kind of bittersweet thing of the org not being there next year. Did that factor in for you at all, or not really?
Not really. Um, it's hard to have an immediate connection to an org when you just got there. It's like it's
Sure.
not like I've been there for like forever and stuff like that. So that sense of that type of narrative to me just made no sense in my eyes. Obviously, I think Hundred Thieves is a great org, and I thought they provide a lot of value to the scene, but it didn't necessarily factor into anything of like, oh, we have to do it for the last highest. Like I'm doing it for myself and my teammates,
So I like that
first
answer.
and foremost. Yeah.
But then, I mean, kind of much awaited. I'd imagine people are kind of waiting for us to get to this point. You experienced quite a personal feud at a certain point on 100 Thieves, and it kind of felt like a very like. I mean, for him, it felt like a set of dominoes that was kind of like. I use the word manically.
Voldemort? Are we talking about Voldemort?
No, no, I'll name him.
Yeah.
Gabriel Bwipo Rao. I'll give you his full name. But if
Yeah.
I use the word manically very carefully in its context with him talking about some of his struggles, not to completely play devil's advocate for him. It's a thing where it felt like a series of dominoes that kind of fell, and you were at kind of the storm of that. There's the famous meme of like I can't remember what it was. Is the first domino is the Dhokla handshake, and then the final one is obviously him making all the comments he made. Not just as a correlation, but there was like a big meme about that at the time.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Have you had an issue with Bippo going back a few years? What was the origins of this?
Well, I previously I didn't have any issues with them beforehand, but it all stemmed like when I was streaming in I think like April or something, and I was just against him in solo queue, and um some guy in his Twitch had just said like Daddy Doke's about to show you who's the best top in NA or something like that along those lines, and then he just went out of like a big tangent and just started shit talking me personally. Well, at that portion of his streams, like all of his stream titles were like about perseverance and how it's not about the process, it's not about the destination, but the journey. You know, it's like it's just very in
Bullshit.
my head, very bullshit the way he's presenting himself and also just talking down to others in the sense of like he said, I had one good year out of six, and that's essentially a dice roll odd. Like, would you want your career to be a dice roll odd? Like, I wouldn't. When at the same time he's talking about like how the process is the most important part and not the destination. So I thought it was very hypocritical and um it just rubbed me the wrong way. Like it just felt like I mean, it was a personal slight, and I don't really know what triggered him to say that. Um, Certainly, I don't think a Twitch chat comment could trigger anything like that out of me to say something like that about anybody. So yeah, I mean, from that point on, like I don't respect him. You know, I watched him a lot previously,
Because this was
and
the
you
thing that
know,
I'd heard.
just
I
too
heard that you
much.
watched quite a lot of his VODs, and it was someone that you were like, you're watching him to like keep on top of your game or whatever. How did that affect
Yeah,
you?
I
Was this
mean,
like,
yeah, it's like I can't believe like this is what you know. So obviously, he didn't know like I'm like watching him all the time and just studying, but yeah, it's just fucked up just to hear some shit like that about you when he's preaching how it's like, you know, persevere guys, like everyone persevere. So it was just completely fucked up. And I think when I first saw the clip, like my heart just sank a bit. It's like, holy fuck. Um and then to process that emotion. Um and then I kind of just buried it a little bit where it's like, okay, I just don't fuck with this guy. But yeah, there's just nothing to do about that. And
did
then
that fuel, not to kind of bring you to a bad place, but did that, because you spoke about in this interview like suffering with like imposter syndrome and like negative things like that, did that like resurface any like bad emotions for you in that way, or?
yeah, definitely, it's like completely taking out of context of like any hardship that really any player goes through to be successful, right? It's like it's not all just up for everyone. You know, it's like everyone has different paths of success, and just completely disregarding like you know what that looks like for really any player to be in the position that they're at. Um, And I felt like I was a living example of what he was preaching. So just to see, like essentially the direct example that he's preaching of um, talking about like, oh, it's about the process. And I felt like that completely characterized me. And then to hear like, would you want a career like that is just complete in contradiction of like pretty much everything he's saying. So yeah, it for sure, you know, big it's hard to not be emotional about it when someone says something like that in front of like everyone essentially. And yeah, from that point on, I mean, I just didn't fuck with them. And yeah, that's
And
it.
obviously, a part of watching someone is you're not only watching the VODs, you presumably got quite a taste for his personality. What did you like? What were qualities in Bwipo as a person that you kind of admired or liked before this happened? Basically, what I'm saying is, do you think that even before what you're talking about is a direct hypocrisy that kind of like broke it for you? But before that, do you think the person you were seeing on stream and you were like watching matched? Like, was he practicing what he was preaching at least to some capacity?
Well, I wasn't necessarily watching him for like the person. I was watching for the gameplay in that
Oh,
sense
fair.
of
Okay. I was just wondering if
yeah, I
you were
was
also watching him for the personality as well, but
no, not necessarily. I mean, he's just very outspoken, which is something I try to do more. I feel like I'm pretty reserved in sense of I don't really ramble on too much. Like if I stream, like I'm pretty non no, I'm not nearly as talkative. I don't think anyone really is as talkative as he is
no,
and express
he
themselves.
might be one of the most talkative people on the planet, to be fair.
Yeah, so exactly. So you know, just qualities like that. It's like, well, you know, maybe I should just be more outgoing.
That's fair.
But
But
yeah,
then
that's about it.
it goes from being a thing where like obviously you've internalized it and been like, I don't fuck with this guy. Presumably that's what leads to your decision because I think that the next proxy point in the timeline is you not shaking his hand after the series, or was there things in the middle that we're missing?
No, I mean that was essentially it. I mean, played in the finals. I think before we went on stage, the writer was telling me like how the ceremony's gonna go. It's like, all right, you're gonna walk out, do a little fist bump, and I'm like, I told him like, I'm not fist bumping this guy, and he's like, okay, and then so yeah, and then the rest
That
is
writer was probably thinking we should have done Tokyo Split this year.
yeah, probably. I mean, I did say it on like the pros podcast where I don't fuck with them. It's just not many people really watch that stuff. So like I wasn't really shy about it. And I think this split of playing, I was just trying to be genuine and be myself because I took it as an opportunity just to really just be myself because I wasn't even supposed to be here. So I just wanted to really be in the moment and just appreciate my time and the opportunity that was given to me because I just know how rare it is to have an opportunity like that. So I just wanted to be authentic and just play this year without no regrets and just do the best I can. And yeah, just doing that and talking about that and my actions were just me being real.
And then you not shaking his hand or fist bumping him is directly from a place of I don't respect this guy, so therefore I'm not going to engage in that with him. Or like what is the
Yeah,
mental? That's pretty much it.
yeah. I mean, exactly. Yeah, it's like how could you? I mean, I don't understand how you could just it'd be like you would have zero respect for yourself if you were to fist bump someone who just completely shits on you and then you extend the hand to him would be like a complete like disregard for your own like self-worth.
Well, the devil's advocate position would be like, oh, it's sportsmanship. It's you be the bigger person, X, Y, Z. Why does this not play a factor in for you? You think that the slight is bigger, or
I mean, it's sportsmanship to be like, yeah, I think this guy's bad and I'm gonna beat him. And like, I don't necessarily care if someone thinks I'm bad. Like, I think I'm bad like half the time. Like, that's not the issue. The issue is just the hypocritical nature of his comments. Um, yeah, I think in competition you're gonna get flamed for your performance, and that just comes with it. It's just tying a personal element to it is what like to me it steps over the line.
interesting? And then obviously it goes on to being a whole thing where like there's the C. I mean, at some point before this was I think it was the C9 barbecue thing, and it was just obviously we culminate in the comments he made about periods and stuff like this. I remember there's a tweet you made where it's I think the quote is "Don't argue with a fool; they'll reveal themselves" or something like this. So obviously there's a degree of relishing that you took in. It's that's a really unfair way of putting it. I need to like reframe this. It's like, but obviously when all of these things happened and he kind of like was exposed in the public eye and like kind of bared the full brunt of criticism, you obviously reacted in a way that would suggest that you were not necessarily enjoying or taking pleasure in it, but like talk to me. I guess I just let you speak about it. What was your reaction to kind of seeing a lot of this unfold?
Well, that I posted that before like any of the other comments came out. So
Okay,
that was
cool.
I posted that in reaction to like him doubling down of like he still couldn't understand like where I was coming from. Because I think the stream after he won the LTA split, it's like he's just doubling down and not able to understand why I would react the way I did. So to me, it's like at that point he's just lost, and there's no point really trying to argue. Like
When in
he
that
just
doubling
doesn't.
down, because I don't remember exactly what was said. Was it a thing? Did he know? Did he know that how you felt about what you'd said about him? What he'd said about you?
I mean, I think so because he talked about it on
Okay.
stream.
It's one of those things, I suppose,
So
where it's like, well, of course he should, but that kind of fuels the dialogue, right?
yeah, so I mean, yeah. So after he doubled down, I'm like, well, there's no like getting through to this guy, or like I'm not gonna try to make him understand my point because there is no middle ground at this point. So you just there's no point. So I just said what I said there, and then the rest it just happened on its own. Like I didn't really contribute to that at all.
How did you feel about that? Because obviously, for a certain point, you've got to feel like, well, there's a degree of recompense here, there's a degree of karma, but potentially it went a little bit too far?
I mean, I think everything after that, like, I didn't really have anything to do with that.
No, of course, I
So
wasn't suggesting you did in any way. That would be quite maniacal, and there'd be a lot of context needed to be additional if you were
yeah,
somehow, if you'd somehow coordinated this, like, you'd have to have like a CIA chip in his head to have made
yeah,
him make some
yeah.
of those comments. But
Yeah.
so I guess my
So
yeah, no, no, my question would be more so, it's a thing where it's like, from your perspective, it's like, wow, I had this big grudge against this person, and like they kind of like, even before those like massive comments came out, it's like he's revealed himself as being like hypocritical in some perspective. So you must feel at a certain capacity, wow, I'm glad that other people can see the same thing that I was annoyed at him for. But at a certain point, I guess my question would be to you, and it's not to um this is how I feel about it. To a certain degree, I'm like putting my own feelings into this. So if you feel as if this is not like a reflection of anything that you feel is within your realm of even emotional response to this, it's like it's almost like watching someone self-flagellating at a certain point. Like we've watched the monk go through the punishment. I don't also want to watch him completely self-immolate and be on fire to a certain capacity. At what point of which he like went through the whole like downfall? Is it like a thing where did you ever look at it like, okay, this is like a little bit too far? Like,
not necessarily, because I feel like those were um that was just a complete different issue that stemmed from what he said
for
compared
sure.
to like the drama between us.
You're more
So
so looking at it
I
like
feel
this
like
has got nothing to do with me, and you reap what you sow. Like this is
yeah, because I thought it was like I mean, it was just like completely different topics. So
I guess the
obviously
reason
there
to
was just
kind of
more tension on him. There was just more tension on him from like what happened between us, but um you know the community reaction around what he said was
for
just
sure.
completely independent of whatever happened between us.
I want to move to the next question because I think it will give a bit more context into like why I'm taking this line of questioning, because I'm in no ways trying to like put a personal onus of like what your feelings were in response to it, because you're right, it has nothing to do with you. But I'm interested in hearing kind of where your opinions lie and what your kind of reaction to it is in terms of personally for you in the beef that you had with Bwipo. Is there forgiveness there from your perspective? Would you be open to like extending the olive, not necessarily extending the olive branch, but like what is your feelings in your heart for him as a person?
Well, he did privately reach out and apologize, which I thought was a genuine apology. So I did accept it in terms of the apology, but to me now we're just at like neutral. I don't necessarily have like hatred towards him or like um I'm not like holding anything against him, but I'm not like in a place where I like respect him either. It's just like a neutral
Yeah,
place where I'm at with him right now.
of
So yeah.
course, of course. Yeah, I guess in this line of questioning, my main what I'd like to make clear is I'm in no way suggesting that you bear the responsibility of like the right of apology or like a path back to forgiveness, because very much you're right. The comments he made are in a section where the onus of that is in a completely different subsection of people to us as men. But it's just an interesting. I kind of wanted to get an insight into your perspective of watching this person have this downfall in the public eye and being so connected with them in terms of like that you being the starting point. What is it like watching that, and then like what degree of empathy or whatever do you
Yeah,
have
I
for
mean,
him during
I
that?
was like, hey, I was hate watching and relishing the moment as well.
Yeah,
It's like, there's someone you don't like, um,
yeah,
going through a hardship that is realistically self-inflicted, and
yeah,
yeah. So I mean, as a hate watcher, like I'm like I'm eating good. So
for sure.
I'll, yeah, I mean,
That was for me. For me, that was the interest in the exploration, because it's like a thing where like in no way is it your responsibility. I thought you were completely in the right pretty much throughout it, but it's such an interesting thing to be involved in this like kind of this person does this thing that's like really fucked up to you, and you watch them kind of like self-immolate or like self-sabotage, entirely self-inflicted. And it's like a thing where I kind of wanted to get what your kind of view on that was, which I think we explored quite interestingly. But yeah, it's a difficult conversation to have, and I guess
yeah,
I'm not backpedaling, but I'm adding a kind of a footnote of context because it is so sensitive, and I don't want to get myself in trouble, obviously, as well. There's that additional thing to where it's self-inflicted, and like the conversation is so far removed from our evaluation of it being important. It's more about, it's not our apology to give or grant, is what I'm saying. But moving on from that, that's obviously a major ordeal you have. You go to Worlds, and you have like a pretty, like we talked about at the beginning of the interview, a relatively important, a relatively impressive tournament in the upsets you face. But also, you talked about it earlier. You have this kind of, you descend as this kind of global star of social media, and you talked about what the motivation for that was. But where did the ideas come from? Because you're just recording yourself in bed. My favorite tweet you did is where you're imitating, it's the Chinese meme of the beaver.
Yeah.
That was like incredible. Like, talk to me about like
Yeah.
how what the day to day of recording these was like, and like where the ideas came from, and like all of this
I
kind of
mean,
stuff.
that's just how I am behind the scenes, and I think what really prompted it was just like as a viewer, like previously of like, just like watching Worlds, like I just see like the most scripted interviews of all time. Is this content's the same again and again and again. There's no real connection to any players. It's just like, all right, we're gonna go to Worlds this time. Scrims are going good, but you know, can't buy too much in scrims. It's just the same like narrative again and again. So it's like in my head, I'm like, I'm only here for a split anyways, right? So it's like I have nothing to lose, and I just want to be genuine in myself and just enjoy the moment. So that was kind of where all this was coming from. And then, um, I mean, I was just posting my experience of going to Worlds, and I just trying to make it funny and just be myself. So that's kind of where it comes from. Just kind of a hate for like how the scene is with content in terms of like there's no connection to any real players or teams out there. It's like I actually don't understand how like teams have fans when they post essentially nothing for them or like interact with them. So then from my point of view, it's like I just want to be myself, just have fun with it and just just enjoy the moment because I think last Worlds or 2023 when I was there, I didn't fully immerse in the moment and enjoy the opportunity that was given to me. And then this Worlds, I wasn't even supposed to be here. That's essentially my mindset of I wasn't even supposed to play. I wasn't supposed to go to Worlds, and I just want to make the most out of this opportunity and just be genuine. And that's what I did. So all that funny shit is like it's just easy to just bullshit. It's just I'm just having fun. And the Chinese meme, like that was hilarious, and I thought it was just a fitting example of our journey. It's like, so what? We're kicked down. I'm not gonna give up. We're gonna keep fighting. And yeah, I think it really resonated with the fans. So I was really happy with that.
What do you feel about, how do you feel about your kind of your celebrity status in China now?
I've heard I'm a celebrity in China, but
You know what they call me in China? They call me Big
what do you
Beard.
call it? Yeah.
And there's another interesting thing. Apparently, because in China, because of the green hat that famously I wear in most of my interviews, apparently,
Hmm.
like that's like a sign of like that's what someone wears if they've been cheated on. So like,
Oh,
there's
really?
a whole thing about like they always say like, oh, I'm sorry for you being cheated on and all of this.
Yeah.
So yeah, you heard about any of the
Well,
ways that they speak about you in China? Or you're not really connected to it. It sounded like you weren't.
I mean, I've heard from like our translators, who was working with us on 100, like, wow, you really blew up. Um, the Chinese fans really love you and all that. But I know I like one view or one video that got like 6 million views or something on Douyin or something. So I didn't really feel like a celebrity. I pretty much never do. People around me say like, "Oh, you're so popular and all that," but I'm just doing me, and that's kind of my mindset of quote unquote being famous. It's just online. It's not the real world. So it's nice to have to me it's just nice to have fans engaged in the league. I guess that's like my takeaway. It's like it's nice to just have fun with it and just be part of the event where it's like as a viewer that I once was, like this is what I would have liked from players, and it's nice that I can do it um, for viewers
Do you
when
have
I
a,
was once in their position.
of course, do you have a message for your China? I'll give you a chance here to go even further and even further viralize yourself. That sounds like I'm asking you to get an infection, but you know what I mean. Give a message to your Chinese fans.
Honestly, I forgot all the Chinese I learned. Um, I mean, I just I just appreciate the sport. I think it's really fun to just interact with people that are
Oh,
passionate
speak a
as
little
Chinese fans
Chinese
are.
for them, man. Speak a little Chinese
I
for them.
mean, no, I actually forgot. There was a Zhongguo Lubai or
Yeah.
something like that. It's like I love China is or like I really like China. But one of my friends was telling me like, yo, you should say this. Like they eat that shit up over there. And then he's Chinese, so it's like he knows kind of some of the memes there. So but no, I mean I just really appreciate how passionate their fans are. They're very invested. Like, dude, I see Hanwha Life get off their team bus like in front of the area, and then there's just like 200, 300 people just shouting for Viper. Like the passion for the players is just unbelievable there, and um, yeah, it's just awesome to see.
Absolutely. And that kind of the final thing I wanted to ask you is you obviously stayed in China for a little bit afterwards. I think you were there for a week or two, maybe a bit longer.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the adventures of Dhokla. What did you get up to in China?
I just wanted to explore because, to me, again, I'm not supposed to be here, so this is like a free paid expense trip to China for me, and I'll never know when I'm gonna be back in China or have a opportunity like this again. So I just have to make the most of it and just explore. So went to the Great Wall. That was a great experience just to say that you've been there, um, and just to see like the history of that.
Did
Then
you
went
do
to
the thing where
Shanghai.
lots of people take videos where they're like, I'm the first person to like ever listen to this artist on the Great Wall? Did you listen to any music? Are you the first person to like
Is
listen?
that a thing?
Yeah,
No.
that's a thing.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. But
Well,
no, I was just enjoying my moment there. Um, and then went to the Great Wall, went to the Forbidden City, um, went to the capital, or uh, I forgot, but it's like the government building, where there's a big picture of Mao Zedong. Just
you
exploring
like
like the
him? Good
historical
guy.
parts of China.
Anyway, moving on.
Let's
Um,
not, yeah, let's moving on. And then went to Shanghai, got to see some of the attractions there, and that was really it's just nice to explore and just make most of kind of like a free trip that is paid for. It's like one of the best parts of traveling, or just being a pro. If you make it to international, you just get a free trip to whatever country, and just everything's essentially paid for, and all you have to do is just
what are the
enjoy it. And
funniest stories you can share with us from China? Like any, because for me, when I've been in Korea or I've been in China, there's so much that can go wrong just because of like not no shared language. Did you get up to any fuckeries, any funny stories?
um not off the top of my head. I guess bargaining is like a thing. Like when I got the hat at the Great Wall, like initially I was just interested in the hat. You're like, oh, what's the price on it? And then just haggling with the people there
You were just there, you
it just
thought
reminded me.
DonJake looks really good in this hat. I think I'll have it as well.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, this looks great for you. You'd like it. Yeah, just haggling a bit reminded me of like when I was in India. It's like how my mom was haggling with like people selling stuff on the street. It's like you just walk away and then the price is gonna go down. You act like you don't want it and the price is gonna go down. And then yeah, so just haggling, pretty fun. The most frustrating part of China is just using WeChat and Alipay. Like if you don't have an eSIM, it's just very hard. Or even if you have an eSIM, like it's just very annoying as a foreigner to get accustomed to like paying everything through one app. And then my Alipay wasn't scanning my passport. Um, so like I just couldn't pay for a while. So I was just having my friends cover everything for me, and then I'll pay them back later. So it's like I just felt like a kid asking like my parents for like, can you buy this for me? Can you buy this for me? I'm like, fuck, man, I just feel so useless here. And it's hard to really look for like reviews online and shit like that because like it's just difficult to find. Like Google Maps doesn't work there. You have to use like different type of maps, and then they don't have great translation. So just all the stuff that you would want to do as like a traveler is just that much more difficult and frustrating to deal with. So yeah, that's pretty annoying.
Cool, Dokla. I thank you so much for coming, and I wanted to give you an opportunity just to end here. I don't know if you want to give a final message, if you want to maybe you want to give an appeal to GMs for any last minute offers for Toplane, if you want to give a message for those out there, the fans of yours, whatever form you want the platform to take in the next, 30 seconds to a minute, however long you want to take. What do you have to share for us at the end of this interview?
Well, first of all, thanks for doing this interview. I think
No,
it's the
it's been
first
an
time
absolute pleasure.
it's like the first time I've ever done like a super long length interview where I can like express myself. So thanks for having this type of discussion, and just thanks for everyone who supported me throughout this year, because I think I just wanted to make the most out of this opportunity that I had, where it's again repeating myself, like I didn't know if I'm not even supposed to be here, so I'm just trying to make the most of it, and I hope in the future, for the sake of like the LCS, I feel like every pro player should try to just resonate with the fans, because the league is just not in a great spot right now, and every time you hear doomer news about it, just saps that extra bit of motivation to just continue playing the league. So um, obviously do whatever is comfortable for you in terms of content, but I hope to see more people in the scene just be more invested in providing value for the fans, and growing the scene back to, I'm not going to say where it once was, because I feel like we're way past that,
You
but
sound like you're making a Trump thing there. Make the LCS great again.
yeah, let's not do that. But yeah, just provide value for the fans, because yeah, because we're essentially building the block for future players to um play. And if there's nothing to play for, and if salaries are this low, then I don't think we're gonna have a real future. And that's kind of already impacting, me specifically right now, but I could see it down the line of impacting other players where they might not want to play. So yeah, just thank you, and thanks to everyone for following my journey, if you have. And I don't know what the future holds for me, to be fair. I'm thinking about streaming, content creation, what have you, but realistically, I don't know how successful or that may be. So, but I feel like it's better than just playing at this point and kind of being in the same position at the end of the year. So, yeah, thank you, I guess, for this year.
Absolutely.
And strange how life worked out. Where at the start of the year, I couldn't conceive, how this year could end for me. But just glad it happened.
Dhokla with a Wu-Tang Clan message for the ages. Do it for the children. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's I would like to see. I think a lot of people would like to see the dog keeping the fight. We wish you the best of luck in whatever you do. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And make sure you shut the OBS Ninja link, because if you go and have a wank now, we'll be able to see it.
I've heard that same joke like twice now. You gotta come up
Nice.
with something new, man. Come on now.
Goodbye. Have a lovely one, man.
All right,
Peace.
see ya.